guests that come in every now and again that support me. His name is LT, and he's got a debate Monday, and it starts at 7. So I can't remember if that's 7 Eastern or specific Pacific time or Standard time. I'll have to check on it, but regardless, I will go live Monday, but I do have a hard cutoff because I want to check that out. I want to give him some support. It's going to be his first debate, so I know he's doing some debate prep now, but I want to be able to check that out. And so when I go live Monday, I'll have that cut off because I want to watch that debate and give some support to him. So talking about the pre-tribulation rapture is not biblical. How would we know it's spiritual? What's spiritual? Talking about the rapture? The rapture is a physical event. If that's what you're in, if you're talking to me, that's physical. It says literally the unalived in Christ go up first. So that means the dead bodies that are in the ground. Yeezy, what's up, man?
Hello. So I had a tough time believing in Christ. I'm not opposed to it at all, but I'm just like confused about a couple things.
Like what?
So in the Bible, the earth is said to be what, 10,000, 11,000 years old now?
Well, so let me put a disclaimer out there. So I believe that's what the Bible says through the lineages, but the Bible doesn't outright say this is how old it is. So there is some room for interpretation on it. You can be a Christian and still believe in long periods of time. I heavily disagree with it. I think that the simple reading of the Bible through the lineages, it says that Adam was 120 when he begot Seth and so forth and so on, and it goes all the way down to Christ, which we know was 2,000 years ago. If you add those dates up, it's around 10,000 years old. There is some conjecture, though, about when did, quote unquote, he start counting, because we know that, it says he was 120 when he begot Seth, but you still have Cain and Abel. It doesn't say how old he was when he had Cain and Abel. So is the quote unquote time, because there's no reason to keep time before the fall because there was no sin, right? So what's the reason to keep time? Because you're going to live forever. So what does it matter? So there is some room for wiggle there. So I would say it like this, brother. I would say that the Bible teaches that the earth is probably less than 10,000 years old, but there is some room for interpretation.
Okay. So the Bible doesn't directly say like, oh yeah, the earth starts at this time.
Yeah, it says it was created in obviously 6 days, but we don't know how long ago that was. Now, I think the Bible clearly teaches that it's less than 10,000, but obviously I'm not the arbiter of truth. I just think that's the plain reading of the Bible.
And last question. So in the Bible, I haven't read it in a long time, I'll admit, so I could be wrong. But I do know when I was reading it, it said ages of some people were around 700 or 500.
Yeah, 900 and so forth and so on, yeah.
Yeah, that. Do you think were years considered different times back then in the Bible, or?
No, I think they actually lived that long because so the Bible doesn't say what happened directly. It doesn't say this is the cause, but we can tell something different. So the pre-flood atmosphere was totally different than the atmosphere we see today. So before Noah's flood, you can see people live to be 900 years old. And then after Noah's flood, you can see them starting to drop off 300, 200 year. And now it's anything we can do to get to 100. So I do believe that the pre-flood world was hyperbaric-like conditions. So I think that this was a contributing factor into men living so long. And then obviously because of their sin, Jesus said that the days of man's not going to be past 120. That's in Genesis 6. So I think that's the reason. So I actually do believe that they lived to be 900 years old before the flood.
Okay. So do you think in the Bible, since there was no sin, because it's animals, right? So the Bible skip that part of like dinosaurs and stuff, right?
Well, it doesn't skip it. Dinosaurs are mentioned in the book of Job. It's called Behemoth. It says, "Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee." And we know that the land animal, like the dinosaur, was created on day 6, and so was man. So God says, "Behold now behemoth, which I made with thee. He eateth the grass as the ox." It talks about the size of his belly. It talks about how strong his bones are. It says he can drink up a river, and it describes it having a tail as big as a cedar tree. Now, when you go through all those descriptors, there's only one animal that fits in all of our animal records. There's only one type of animal that fits, and that's the sauropod dinosaur. So now the word dinosaur isn't in the Bible, but clearly behemoth is a sauropod dinosaur.
Okay. There were just some things I was confused about. And one last thing.
Sure.
So God's plan, and this can go a lot of ways, because I know you can't just have positive, to have success, you have to suffer. But when it comes to like these bad things like rape or like mass serial killing murders.
Let's use TikTok language, brother. I know it doesn't hurt my feelings. I just don't want to get my channel banned. So grape and unalivement.
Yeah, that. So, do you think that has to do with God's plan? Like,
it's not His will. No. So what happens is it's a byproduct of our free will. God says it's not His will that any should perish, so it's not His will that you would do these bad things. But so God created man because He wanted man to freely choose Him, right? God wants you to choose Him. It's no different than you having a girlfriend or a wife. You want that individual to choose you. You want them to want to be with you. I don't want to force my wife to love me. I want her to love me upon her own free will. I want her to choose me. Same thing with God. God wants us to choose Him. Now, He could make us choose Him because He's God. And the Bible clearly says He can make the rocks cry out if He wanted to. But He wants man to freely choose Him and be with Him. So God's not going to force you to be with Him. And by definition, if He gives you the choice, then He has to give you the choice to say no also. And because of that, man has the ability to do things that they shouldn't do. But it's man's fault, not God's.
Okay, yeah. So, if I were to ask God for help, how would He help me if it's free will? He can't interpretate or cause other things to happen because it's free will.
Well, I'm not going to sugarcoat things for you, brother. I'm going to be real. The answer might be no. People say that they ask God for stuff all the time, and sometimes the answer is just right. No, you're not. It's not. So when you say God help you, God will save you. There's no doubt about that. The Bible says that everyone that calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. But and God has helped me throughout my life, but I don't want to paint a picture of rainbows and sunshine that's going to sit here and pretend that you're going to get everything that you ask when you pray, because that's not necessarily true.
Okay, there were just some things that weren't as clear for me in the Bible. That's all.
Well, sure, man. Listen, if you have any additional questions, I'd love to be the one that helps lead you back to Christ, man. So if you have any additional questions, give me a follow, send me a message. If you don't want to do it on a platform, you can send me a private message, and I'd love to share Christ with you.
All right, thank you.
All right, man. Appreciate you coming, brother. All right. Good conversation. Basic, I can't read your whole name.
Hi.
What's up, man?
Hi, you okay?
Doing good, brother. Hope you are.
Yeah, I'm doing good as well. Anyway, so am I right in thinking you believe in creation and not evolution?
I believe in microevolution, but macroevolution I don't believe in. So,
but how would you define micro and macroevolution?
Micro is just genetic trait isolation, either encouraging or discouraging, and then I would say that macroevolution would be genetic information gain, because it has to be genetic because you got to be able to pass it on to your children, new information as far as new structures, new functions, new code, new DNA, and then obviously they have to be gained from something that wasn't there before. That's genetic information gain.
Well, if that's the case, can you explain why we have tailbones but no tails?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not the way we phrased it is an incorrect. We don't have a tailbone, we have a coccyx. And the coccyx is not vestigial. It has its anchor points for our reproductive organs. So you can't hop on the good foot and do the bad thing, if you know what I mean. If you don't, you can. I mean, it doesn't you're going to have a hard time doing it because you don't have anything to push against. If that doesn't make any, I don't want to get too graphic, but obviously they're anchor points for your reproductive organs. They have muscles that attach to those bones. So whoever told you that it was a vestigial, it was either ignorant of the anatomy or outright lied to you.
All right, well, can you explain why we have very similar ears and noses to other apes, gorillas, chimpanzees? Because to me, that points to a common ancestor.
Well, it could also point to a common designer too. So just because we have similarities, like I can show you a picture, I can do it right now if you'd like, but I got a picture of a spoon, a spork, a salad fork, and a fork. They all look very similar, and I can show you that it looks like they evolved if I just line them up and then tell you a story about it. But just because I use shapes and assumptions doesn't mean that they have a universal common ancestor, right?
Well, I'm religious. I'm not religious myself, but I believe that like the existence of God and the existence of evolution can coexist. Like Darwin was religious.
You say cancer exists? Well, that wouldn't be good evidence for evolution, would it?
What do you mean? I didn't say that.
Oh, I misunderstood you then. I apologize. I thought you said cancer.
Because like Darwin believed in both God and evolution. Like I don't know exactly how he put it, but if God exists, maybe he created the common ancestor for all life, and then life evolved to its own will.
I don't think so. I think he believed in God to begin with because he was raised in the church, and then after that he went atheistic, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty sure that's how it went down.
Well, I don't know for sure, but you could be right. And also, like, if the flood was real, if Noah's Ark and all that was real, what did they feed the carnivores?
There wasn't carnivores until after the flood. That's what the Bible says. You could say you don't.
Like,
Yeah, you could say you don't believe it, but
exist.
well, the animals that got on the ark was not supposed to be carnivores. That's what the Bible says. So he didn't give animals permission to eat meat until they got off the ark. Now we can see.
So there were no lions.
You can
nothing like that.
Yeah, there were lions, and we've had
They're
vegetarian
carnivores.
lions that.
There's
Okay,
no such thing as vegetarian lions.
okay. Do me a favor and look up the lion called Little Tyke. This was a recent event.
Vegetarians literally can't survive on a
Okay, brother.
plant-based diet.
I
That's
understand.
ridiculous.
I understand that you've said that now, but here I got observation that diametrically opposes that and proves you wrong. The lion's name was Little Tyke, right? It was in a zoo. Little Tyke refused to eat any meat, so the zoo, the people that ran the zoo, found it hard to feed Little Tyke because it wouldn't eat meat. It only ate vegetarians, chicken eggs, and milk. Right?
He
And
was
it
looked
ate a lot
after
of
in a zoo
vegetables and
to be
stuff.
kept alive. Lions in the
You're not
wild.
listening. You're not listening, right? Yeah, they were looked after on the boat too. So that's neither here nor there. So
Before
they
the
were both
boat,
looked
though,
after.
Those vegetarian lions can't have survived. On
Okay,
their
brother.
own.
So wait a minute. Hold on. Wait just a second, because it seems like your argument now is switching in real time. First of all, they couldn't do it. Now that I've shown you that they actually could do it, and I have a provable case, now it sounds like you're shifting the burden to
With
well, they
modern
were taken
medical
care of.
care, that didn't exist at the time.
It was
of the
not.
flood.
That's not true. It was not medical care. They fed it food, and it was literally vegetarian food. That's not medical care. What are you talking about? They didn't give it anything special to make it like. They didn't have to shoot it with a specific enzyme to make it eat plants. It just ate plants, brother. It was a vegetarian.
They
It ate
needed
oats and stuff
they
of this
needed
nature.
medical attention to stay alive from
You
the
don't know
protein
about this. That's
deficiency.
absolutely
Wait,
outrageously
exception
false,
make the
brother.
rule?
That's not true.
Just because one
So-
lion is vegetarian.
No, it doesn't.
Every
But
single lion
no,
is.
it doesn't.
Exactly.
But it destroys your argument, though, doesn't it?
How? Wait, how does that destroy his argument?
Because lions can be vegetarian, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there you
One
go.
lion.
Well, you have to
out of
prove that
how
every
many
single
lions,
lion
billions of
actually-
I
lions?
I did. So I think y'all kind of missed the argument. So I'll go back over it pretty slow to help you out. Okay. So the contention is that lions could not be vegetarian on the ark. I showed you that God says that they clearly were. The Bible clearly says that the animals before they got off the ark were all vegetarian. You said,
You do
no,
know what
lions
the
can't be
Bible is,
vegetarians.
straight
Then I
fact.
gave you stop talking. I gave you an example where a lion was a vegetarian, right? This is
Yeah,
a
in the
known,
modern
testable,
world.
provable. All right, brother. Have a good day, okay? I know when you're interrupting before I get it all the way out, I know that you don't care about the evidence. This is why when I brought up the vegetarian lying, that instantly defeated your argument. Instead of wanting a person in a conversation will go, "Wow, I didn't know about that, man. Thank you I have to look into that." I'm not saying you got to believe everything that I say, but I literally gave you the evidence for you to look up. And instead of accepting that, you instantly went to the next talking point on your evolutionary check sheet. Oh crap, vegetarian lions are real. Let me go to something else that disproves the Bible. It's not a conversation. You're not listening. Silix, what's up, man?
Yeah. Do you believe the Bible, like the biblical flood, was a local or like a global flood?
Global flood.
Is there any evidence for that?
Yeah, hydrologic sorting, polystrata fossils, dinosaur bone beds, soft tissue, and DNA being found in dinosaurs.
Okay. Where did all the water come from?
The fountains of the deep, for the most part.
And where are those?
It's where the crust of the earth broke open. It says that's where the fountains of the deep come from. So when you look at the earth and you see all those cracks in it that we have now, those fault lines, that's where the water come from.
Is there any evidence to show that?
Yeah, the earth is literally cracked open like an eggshell all over the planet. And then when you see the rocks that it shot out are all, laid to the side where you see the cracks happened. Yeah.
Yeah, can you give a source that says there's this abundance of water beneath the earth that's more than there is on the surface?
Sure. Hold on one second. Let's see. There's like 2 oceans worth of water that's still under the crust of the earth. Let's see. Let me ask it for a source. Give me a source. Hydros Nature Magazine 507, pages 221 and 224. I can give you the number too if you'd like to look it up. It's DOI. This is the paper number. 10.1038 Nature 13080.
Just give me a second.
There's another one. This was also done in Nature, the theoretical paper explaining why the mantle could hold ocean-sized amounts of water. That paper was done in 2003. Evidence of transition zone nearly water saturated. That was done in 2017. So yeah, there's plenty of water. I mean, you have black smokers in the bottom of the Marianas Trench that has underwater thermal vents in it that's still spewing out water. So that means that there's clearly water underneath that, right?
Do you have I don't know what the first source was, but do you have any kind of scientific paper for that?
I just gave it to you. That was the Nature.
Okay, what's it called again? The Nature magazine?
Let's see. I lost my place. Hold on.
You're good.
Hold on one second. I lost my place here. Sorry. It's called the Landmark Paper Showing Water in the Mantle Transition Zone. Pearson, Pearson, DG. This was done in 2014. And it's called Hydros Mantle Transition Zone, indicating a ringwoodite included with diamond. This was in Nature 507 221 through 224. And the ringwoodite is the type of rock that it is, and it says that it can store up to 2.5 amounts of water in this crystalline structure. So, but anyway, I mean, if you want to,
it's Hydros Mantle Transition by D.G. Pearson, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're not aware that there's water underneath the crust of the earth, brother?
There probably is, sure. I don't think there's enough to, raise the water levels above Mount Everest, though.
I don't think so either. The Bible wouldn't say that either. So if you wanted all that information to get to that point, yeah, I wouldn't conclude that either. The Bible doesn't say that there was enough water to go over Mount Everest because Mount Everest wasn't there.
Sure.
Again, you can say you don't believe it, but you can't say the Bible doesn't teach it. It says in the book of Psalms that as the waters assuaged, meaning as the waters went off the continents, it says the mountains arose and the valleys sank down. So clearly we don't believe that Mount Everest was there. Mount Everest is a result of the continents breaking because the water went from underneath the crust of the earth to on top of the crust of the earth. There is no mysterious water that's now missing. The water that flooded the earth is in the oceans. If you flatten out if you push the mountains down and raise the valleys up, then there would be enough water to flood the earth 2 miles thick around the entire planet, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what we got. No points for Pants. What's up?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Hope you are.
Yeah, doing great. I was just curious if a flood was real, a global flood of that size. You know, how after it happened, how do like the kangaroos get to Australia?
How the kangaroo they hopped. Now, let me ask you a question.
From the
though.
Middle East to Australia, leaving no skeletons?
Well, you wouldn't leave skeleton. I mean, the skeletons wouldn't survive because microorganisms would eat that. You know, I deer hunt, and after I skin the animal out, the first thing I do is throw the bones out on the ground in the woods, and they don't last very long. They're gone in a year and some change. So I wouldn't expect you're going to find any kangaroo bones.
2 kangaroos could hop all the way to Australia across vast land and oceans.
Well, if I told you that they got on a floating raft and sailed to Australia, would you think that was a lot sillier than hopping there?
I wouldn't think that at all.
So you think kangaroos can build a raft and then float to Australia?
I do not. I didn't say
So
that
if
at
they
all.
got on, so I'll ask it again. So when I said the kangaroos hopped to Australia, because you can clearly see land bridges, that land bridges aren't there now, but you can clearly just zoom out on Google Earth and you can clearly see a dot of islands that would clearly be a land bridge. I think evolutionists also believe this. They just believe it happened over millions of years and not recently, clearly because the kangaroos got there somehow. So my point is when I said they hopped from the Middle East all the way to Australia, I said, would you think that that's sillier than them getting on a raft and floating to Australia? Which one is better, them getting on a raft and floating to Australia or them hopping from the Middle East?
No, they're both equally insane.
Well, that's what you guys believe about the monkeys that got to South America.
That's not what we believe. That they hopped.
It's
to South
exactly what
America?
evolution. No, that they got on a raft and literally sailed across the ocean.
Who believes that?
Evolutionists, look it up. This is not even controversial. They don't even think it happened once. They think it happened several times to get all of the speciation that you have in South America. See, the monkeys are supposed to be in Africa, and the land bridges it was supposed to be snow then, and monkeys are clearly not going to cross the snow. So you got a problem because you got monkeys in South America and you got monkeys in Africa. So how did they get there? Well, evolutionists say that they got on a raft, a floating debris raft. I'm not making the claim that they built one. I'm just saying that they got on a floating debris mat and then sailed across the Atlantic.
I've never heard that postulated by
it's
anybody.
absolutely true. Yep, it's absolutely true. They got books about it. They got magazines. Just look it up. You'll see. I'm not making it up. They believe that they sailed there.
How did 6 humans repopulate the Earth in 4,000 years? Without,
I mean, do I got to
the
tell you how they
Egyptians
did
knowing
it?
anything's happening? I mean, the Egyptians were like thriving during that time. That was a
Well, how do you know that?
historical artifacts
Well, that's
and
so.
things that have been found.
Okay, you can find items, I grant you, but you can't. The earliest writing goes back to about the times of the flood, not before. Now, what they write about claims that it goes back. It is true. Look up the earliest writing and then tell me I'm wrong.
Okay, hold on just a
Okay.
Yeah, so what did you understand from this source from Pearson?
Well, I didn't. I just Googled it for you to show you that there was water underneath the crust of the earth because that's what you were asking about. That's what I gave you to show you that there was water underneath the crust of the earth. No, I literally just told you I Googled it for you. I don't need to read the paper to show me that there's water under the earth. I just figured you needed one.
Yeah.
No,
So this doesn't. It doesn't say there's like liquid water. What it says is there's ringwoodite, which is which is inside of diamonds. It's not liquid water.
Yeah, but, brother, there's water underneath the crust of the earth. That's what I'm showing you. And there's enough ringwoodite, evidently, to hold a lot of water. But that's neither here nor there. It doesn't have anything to do with the creationist argument. I was literally just giving you a source to show you that there's water underneath the crust of the earth.
Yeah, but not enough water to cause a global flood.
All right. Okay. Yeah, there's not enough water to cause enough global flood to go over Mount Everest now. You are 100% correct.
Okay,
I don't know who made that argument.
I don't
know who made that argument, but
I didn't even say that.
You did say you literally said that earlier.
I asked you prior, like, was it as tall as Mount Everest? And you said no. So
you said there's not enough water to go over Mount Everest, and then I said that I would agree with you. There's not. This is the second time that we're bringing this up.
So how high was it? How was the water?
I said it was like I said something like, I can't remember off the top of my head, but something like a cubit or something like that over the tallest hill at the time. So I don't know what the tallest hill at the time was, so I don't know.
Yeah. Would it just be in like the local area, or is it like across the entire world? Like it was a certain height?
All over the entire planet.
Okay. Yeah, there's not enough water inside the mantle to do that.
To do what?
To raise the oceans.
Okay. I don't think you were listening, so it's fine. I'll start over. Okay. So I would agree with you. Yeah, I'll start over. So there's enough water on the planets now, that's in the oceans now. There's enough water for it to cover the entirety of the planet 2 miles thick. All you have to do is push the mountains down and raise the valleys up. If you smoothed out the planet, there would be a 2 mile thick layer of ocean that went all over the entirety of the planet. Okay, so there's more than enough water to flood the earth. The thing is that you have these high places that pushes the water out into the low places, right? The low places are the oceans, and that's where the water's at now. So the Bible says at the book of Psalms, it says at the end of the flood, it talks about as the waters assuaged, as the waters went off the continents and started to go to the low places, this caused the mountains to arise and the valleys to sink down. So Mount Everest wasn't there until after the flood. Again, you can say you don't believe it, but you can't say the Bible doesn't teach it.
Okay, that's fine. How do you know the Bible, like what the Bible claims to be true, is true?
I don't see any evidence to not support it. Like, for example, when I look at evidence for the flood, the Bible makes a claim about a worldwide flood, and I clearly see enough evidence for that to go all over the planet. So when it makes claims, I can test those claims, and I don't see any reason not to believe it.
Hey, what's up, Will? Sorry to interrupt, man. Good. How you doing?
So, man, doing good. Hope you are.
15 cubits, brother, above the mountain.
Very well. I knew it was something. I couldn't remember. I knew it was something cubits. Thank you, man.
Yes, sir, brother. No problem.
So could you restate the evidence again for flood?
I guess the other guy just kind of left when I told him to bring up that research. Hydrologic sorting, polystratofossils, dinosaur graveyards, soft tissue, and DNA found in dinosaurs.
Yeah, can we just go one by one, like whichever one you want to cover?
Sure. Which one would you like to cover? I'll cover any of them.
Dinosaur one sounds pretty interesting.
The soft tissue, DNA, or the bone beds?
The bone beds.
Right. So you got two different evolutionary models, right? Two different models. Sorry. You got two different models. You got the creation model and the evolution model. So you have a formation. It's called the Morrison Formation and the Hills Creek Formation. It literally goes from Mexico all the way across the United States and into parts of Canada. That's one dinosaur boneyard. It's called the Morrison Formation. And then that attaches to the Hills Creek Formation. This is one solid graveyard, though, of dinosaurs. Right? Now, the evolutionary model says that these were singular individual events of dinosaurs being unalived and then covered up with sediment to create fossilization. So were these individual flood events over millions of years, or was it the flood model? The flood model said that these things unalived in a global flood, Noah's flood, they got sorted out like you would expect in a flood. It would group these things together in a huge floating debris mat, and then as the water started to flow off the continents, the dinosaurs would be laid down in a graveyard, and then sediment would be washed over them that way. So now we got to use Occam's razor and determine whose model best fits the evidence. Okay. The evolutionary model says that these were individual events over millions and millions and millions of years. Okay. Well, if that's true, you would have to say that the dinosaur most likely unalived first for whatever reason. For whatever reason, it unalived, and then it was covered up by a flood, because the dinosaurs show various states of decay after they unalived. So some of them are in excellent condition, not in necessarily the Hales Creek Formation, but in other parts of the world. You see like the Ankylosaurus or the Ankylosaurus, or however you say it, that still has all of its skin and its eye sockets, and it's excellently preserved. And the reason why is because it was buried rapidly. So rapidly that it was like in a mud landslide or something, and it cut off the oxygen content to the organism and caused rapid fossilization. The ones we see in the Morrison and Hales Creek Formation showed like they rotted for a while and then was covered up by sediment. So it kind of seems strange to me how these dinosaurs unalived and then was caught in a flood afterwards. That seems kind of strange to me, but it's possible. Not implausible, it's possible. Or is it more likely that they all unalived in a one flood event and then got laid down? I think the flood model clearly fits that better. I can make some predictions based off of this. I can say that if all of these dinosaurs unalived in the same event, because it was only 4,500 years ago, you should still be able to find soft tissue and DNA inside the dinosaur. And that's what we're finding. If they lived 65 million years ago, that prediction is you can't make it. DNA and soft tissue cannot last for 65 million years. So I think this clearly fits the flood model.
Sure. Do you have like a source for that too? For the rapid flood?
For the flood?
Mm-hmm. Or sorry, for the like the boneyards?
The soft tissue and stuff. Yeah. 1 second, let me get there. That is soft tissue. All right. So there's so many of these things. There's so many of them. The first one you can go to, the groundbreaking one, is Mary Schweitzer. That's the scientist that did it. It's called Soft Tissue Vessels and Cellular Preservation in Tyrannosaurus Rex. Mm-hmm. This was in 2005.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm asking more so for a source that shows that since there is this soft tissue and such, that proves there was a flood. The soft tissue is not what proves the flood. The soft tissue supports the model. Okay. So now there is some creationists claim that because there's blood clots. So some creationists claim that because there's blood clots, this show that there's rapid catastrophic event, because there's a certain thing that happens if you're in a very catastrophic event, then it causes your blood to clot all over your body. There's specific things that happen to this. Drowning is a possibility for one of them, but it can also be disease and be these other things that causes blood clots. So if you unalive right now, if you fell over with a massive heart attack, then gravity is going to pull your blood to pull it down to whatever, if I was to fall on my face, then all of the blood would go towards the front of my body, right? It wouldn't clot because there's no oxygen in there to cause it to clot. It would move forward. But there is certain things in your body that can cause it to clot. And the fact that we see clotting in the dinosaurs throughout the dinosaur shows different things. It could be drowning. It could be a catastrophic event, but it could also be disease and things of this nature. So that's why I usually don't bring that up, because there's other factors that could be in play. It doesn't necessarily just prove flood. But the soft tissue and DNA show that the dinosaurs could not have lived 65 million years ago, which supports the flood model. Okay, yeah, I'm reading this right now. Were damaged blood vessels in the ostrich bone from 80 million years ago. Yeah, it says that we don't.
That's not.
It's the ostrich. I think it's femur or something like that. But I don't think there's an answer for us to why it lasted this long, but if that is the case, how does that prove there was a flood?
Brother, I've answered this like 3 times now. Okay, I'm not trying to sound disrespectful, but I'm going to answer it again.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious.
It doesn't prove the flood. I'm not saying that soft tissue proves that there was a flood. I'm saying soft tissue proves the model. There's only two models. So you're going to have to, and if you got a third model, I'd like to hear it, but in the history of the world, there's only ever been two models. The first model says that dinosaurs lived 65 million years ago and that these dinosaurs were fossilized individually through individual flood events. That's what the evolutionary model says. Unless you have a third one, that's what it says. Then there's the creation model that says, no, the flood was 4,400 years ago, and it unalived these dinosaurs. They floated around for a couple of months decaying, and then as the waters went off the continents, it buried them in sediment, causing fossilization. Now, based off of these two, you got these two competing theories. We got to determine which one has the best evidence that supports it. And I'm showing you that dinosaur soft tissue and DNA does not support the evolutionary timescale of it being 65 million years. So, no disrespect to you, please don't ask me if soft tissue support or if soft tissue proves a flood again, because I've said it like 4 times now.
Okay. Yeah.
Quick question: wouldn't the Ark have like the predators and the prey? Wouldn't they like start killing each other? Or is that just
Yeah,
like,
there was no predators or quote unquote. They weren't allowed to eat meat until they got off the ark. And I say this all the time. You're allowed to not believe it, but you can't say the Bible doesn't teach it.
I was genuinely curious. I haven't read the Bible yet.
Yeah, no problem. So let me answer that question real quick. And that where Sokka says the answer is iron-free radicals. No, it's not. Iron in the hemoglobin does not. I can literally take you to the paper where they're postulating that iron may help it, but it's not the answer. It literally states in that paper that this doesn't fit current degradation models. So iron is not the answer to get it out to 65 million years. I can tell that you Googled that because that's what Google tells you. Ask Google for the source. Ask Google for the source. Google's going to tell you it's going to be iron cross-linking, and it's a paper that Mary Schweitzer also wrote. When you go to that paper, look at the very first words of the abstract. It literally tells you that this is not the mechanism to get it out to 65 million years. But Google leaves that part out for people when they read it. See what we got here. Oh no! I hope it's not doing that again, where it's knocking people again. I just lost all them guys on the stage, and here we go. So we'll see. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Tony, what's up, brother?
How you doing, bro? I'm just driving, man, listening, bro. Good stuff.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
All right, guys. I'm looking for some ops. If anybody would like to have a conversation, then step on up. Let's see what we got. All right, let's see if they accept this. Accept it this time. Health, what's up, man?
Give me 1 second.
Some guy asked about some molecular clocks. I saw that. I don't know what that's about.
Oh, he's talking about radiometric dating. He's probably talking about uranium to lead. So they're let me go. I think I still got that. Let me see if I can go to it. I had a very conversation with a guy the other day. Uranium lead zircon dating. So there's whenever they do uranium to lead zircon dating in the crystals, they use a molecular clock, if you will, because they look at two different uranium isotopes. Excuse me. They look at two different uranium isotopes that decay into lead. Uranium 238 and something else, and it decays into lead 204 and 206. Or not 204, but 206 and 207. Who cares, right? Long story short is they look at the two different types of uranium inside the crystal, and then they look at the two different types of lead inside the crystal to determine if they match. So it's called being congruent. So what they do is they try to exclude all of the other lead that's not quote unquote congruent. I think I'm saying that right. I think that's the word. I know I got this somewhere. Where is it? Because I just downloaded this the other day. Give me 1 second, guys. Let me pull this up. Let's see, where's zircon dating? There it is. Concordant. That's it. It's not congruent. It's concordant. So what they do is they look at two different types of uranium, and the uranium decays to lead, and the uranium is inside the zircon crystals. Now, normally zircon crystals accept uranium and doesn't accept lead, right? So uranium decays into lead. So the thought process goes like this: zircon crystals allow in uranium. They exclude lead. So therefore, any lead you find inside the zircon crystal had to come from the decay. And you can measure that. You can determine how much lead is there. That's the idea, right? Because uranium decays into lead. So they go, okay. So, but the problem is that it's not a closed system. There is leaching. Water can bring in lead, it can take out lead, it can bring in uranium, it can take out uranium. So what they look for is they look for this concordant. They look for both of the uranium, the two different types of uranium inside the crystal. They look for them to be in the crystal, and then they look for the lead. And if both of those match, meaning they're saying the same dates, then they say, okay, this must be a real date because they're saying the same thing. And if they're saying the same thing, then that means that there is no leaching in or out of the material. Unfortunately, that's just not always true. Leaching can still cause concurrent dates. They can still cause things to be off. And I can go more into that, but it's kind of last time I did it, people was like, oh, this is very boring and stuff. So if that individual, if you have a question specifically about it, come up and I'll engage it, but I'm not going to go through that whole thing because it's very technical and most people find it really boring. And I'm not saying I'm the best to explain it, but it does get kind of boring. So, but I can give you examples to where they tested things with concurrent dates, meaning that all of the you had a group of zircon crystals all around each other. They tested 48 zircon crystals. 20 of them gave them the dates that they were expecting, while 5 of them gave billions and billions of years, which they weren't expecting. They don't mention in the paper about the other 10, which is very suspect, and they think 3 of them had lead 204 in it, which is common lead. So they said that had to be washed in, right, contaminated. So they excluded those. I can give you examples where they think just because something's concurrent still doesn't give you the correct dates. So that's probably what he's asking about. Well, they're undamaged. Yeah, they don't waste the time testing damaged crystals. They take that out of the equation before they test them. They're not going to waste their time testing damaged crystals. That wouldn't make no sense because they already believe that if the damage. So what they do, guys, they look at it, and in this paper it talks about the sharp edges of the crystals to show you that they had not been damaged. So it goes through that in the paper. But what they do is when they try to eliminate bad crystals. So if you find a zircon crystal that's got a hole in it, then obviously they exclude that because clearly water can bring in and out additional lead, right? It can bring it in and it can take it out. The problem with this theory, though, is uranium is radioactive. It shoots off alpha particles. Anytime you put a Geiger counter over something radioactive, it sounds like a fuzzy TV, right? Right? All that fuzzy stuff. That's literally the alpha particles that is shooting off of that. That's why it's bad, radioactive, right? That's what that is. So as soon as you put this radioactive material inside of a zircon crystal, it instantly starts blowing holes in the side of it. Now, it does take a while for it to obviously get through the whole thing, but if these are billions or millions of years old, those alpha particles have been shooting legitimate bullet holes in the sides of those crystals. So when they say that, oh, these are perfect and can't be contaminated, it's silly, right? And the helium is smaller than the lead. Yeah, so the helium hasn't escaped. This is one of the young Earth creationist models to show that the decay rates haven't been decaying for millions of years, or the helium would have already dispersed. You shouldn't have helium inside of it, inside the crystal. It should have already dispersed. But the fact that the helium is still in there, when uranium decays into lead, it produces helium. And the measurable amounts of helium that's in there now shows about a 6,000-year-old decay rate, not millions. Because it's small enough to go through the microscopic, if you will, holes within the crystal. Nothing is perfect without permeation. So it's big enough to stop water, or solid enough to stop water, but the helium can still disperse through the crystal walls. So anyway, if you guys have any questions, like I said, I'm looking for some ops. Step up and let's have a good conversation. Yesterday was a great live, man. I had solid 100 people in here, solid watching. And they stayed watching for a while too. It was nice. Do you have a? Yeah, I do have a YouTube channel by the same name. I just started a Facebook channel by the same name, and I have a Rumble channel. Now I don't go live over there, so what I do is I'll have the TikTok cannot have an entire live video because it's too long, several hours most of the time. So I'll try to put my lives on TikTok and YouTube. Now, eventually I would like to be able to go live on TikTok and YouTube, but I've done it a couple of times. I just don't get any engagement over there. So right now I'm waiting till I grow a little bit bigger, but I do put my videos over there. And when I get just a little bit bigger, then I will condense these channels. I just don't think there's no sense in me doing it right now because I'm just not getting the engagement on Rumble and YouTube. And, I'm pretty new to Rumble and YouTube, so that's why I'm probably not getting that engagement. And I also have to get a subscription to like a StreamYard or something like that, and I'm just not big enough to do that yet. But hopefully I will. So if you guys give me a like and a follow, I'll keep growing, and we'll see what we can get. I've challenged one of the most prolific atheists on TikTok anyway. To a debate. I have a video of him on my page. When I say prolific, I say that because I see him all the time. Maybe that's anecdotal, but I see this guy all the time. But I made a video the other day where I went into his page because he sent me some other videos. Anyway, long story short, this guy keeps sending me messages. But then when I go into his live, he acts like a child, and then I can't have a conversation with him. So instead of going into his live or him coming into my live, I've challenged him to a debate. So hopefully he'll accept. And I very seriously doubt he will, though, but we'll see. So that way I can kind of get into the debating. I debate people on here all the time, but I'm talking about a formal debate. This is just, me debating people that come up. A formal debate is different than kind of what we're doing here. So it would be a third party hosting. But we'll see. Ice cores from the Antarctic. You talking about the ice core dating? If that's the case, yes. And we can. So what's used to get those extreme dates is assumptions. And they're putting too many assumptions on it. So when they talk about the layers in the ice, there's a layer in the ice called the firn layer. Yeah, okay, how they use it to show dates. So when you look at ice, if you was to cut down in the ice, you would see layering just like you would out here in the ground, right? You would see layering. Those are snowfalls. So what they say is that these are annual, but they're not. They're not annual. Snowfall's different all the time. So they try to say that these layers are annual. It's more scientific than that. I'm breaking it down simpler, but that's pretty much what they say. So they try to count the layers, but there's a layer called the firn layer. The firn layer is where the ice goes from being fluffy snow to solid ice. So what happens is when snow falls down on the ground, there's microscopic little holes because the snow's it's shaped like a snowflake, right? It has all these different edges and stuff on it. And when it lays on the ground, it lays up to another snowflake. And you have this space in here where it's fluffy and it's puffed up. This is why when you walk on snow, clearly it crunches down because it's mostly full of air. The more snow that you get on top of that, then obviously that snow starts to compact. And then it goes from being a snowflake to where it's crystalline and has all these shapes on it to where obviously it gets compacted down and squeezed into water. you can take snow and then a really heavy vehicle, like if you're in the military in the snow, a tank will drive over snow and it leaves ice behind it because the tank literally crushes the snow into ice, right? This happens when the snow falls, eventually it becomes so heavy that it creates ice. Now, anything above the firn layer is mostly snow, right? It's hard, compacted snow. This is where you get your layers. Below the firn line is mostly solid ice. Now, there's still some give and take, obviously, within that a little bit, but much farther below the firn layer, it's solid ice. And so they cannot see this layering. There is not this perfect layering. So they have to use these other isotopes and things of this nature to try to say how old it is, because you can no longer count the rings because literally it's squished so tight that there's no longer layers in it. And it's called the firn layer. You guys are free to look that up on your own. Now, a couple of things that we can look up, and let me pull this up too, because I usually have this on it. Like Kent Hovind says, if you guys ask the questions in the order I got the answers, I'll be able to pull them up a lot faster. But let me pull this up. I'll give you some known examples here. All right, let's see. All right, so what we can test and observe in the ice layer is we can look at the Leakey, I think it's called Leakey eruption. These are testable and observable. We have it documented when they erupted. It's L-A-K-I, Leakey eruption, and this happened in 1783. And then we can go to the Tambora eruption. This happened in 1815. And we can go to the Krakatoa eruption that happened in 1883, right? So each one of these volcanoes erupted, obviously will put a small layer of ash in the atmosphere, and then that will settle down to the earth, right? And we can determine that this layer came from that volcano and this layer came from that volcano, so forth and so on, because of the isotopes that are inside of it. So the Leakey eruption in 1783 is at a depth of 120 meters. 120 meters. The Krakatoa eruption, now, I'll tell you where the firn layer is at too, because this is below the firn layer, so this is not in compacted snow, right? So the Leakey eruption is at 120 meters. The Krakatoa, which is at 1883, is at 90 meters, okay? So these are 100 years apart from each other. One of them is 120 meters. It happened in 1783, and it's at 123 meters. And then Krakatoa happened in 1883, literally 100 years later, and it happened at 90 meters. Because these are known testable eruptions, we can go to those layers to where we find these isotopes that show this is the volcano. We can determine how thick the ice is, how much snow would fall, or how much ice would accumulate in 100 years. We can calculate that, right? So the simple math from 1783 is 100 years. We saw 30 meters of ice accumulate, right? From 90 to 120 is 30 meters of ice accumulate. We can then extrapolate, because the entire depth of the ice that they're drilling to bedrock is 3,503 meters deep. So if we take 3,053 meters, we can divide that by 30 and it equals 101. 101 times 100 equals 10,100 years. So those ice cores are no older than 10,000 years by observable observation. That's science. We can test and observe this. Now, what they do is they try to say that, well, it's older than that, and then they try to use speculation, right? To try to say, well, this is the reason we think it's older than that. But testable, observable science shows us the accumulation rate and how deep it is. And it's not over 10,000 years. It is right at 10,000 years. It's not hundreds of thousands of years like they're trying to claim. And it should be noted that their first predictions was that this ice layer was going to be 200,000 years old. When they drilled down in it, they could only get enough data now to support to say that it's 100,000 years old. And I can give you the papers on that if you'd like. But our calculations, and this was the name of the paper is Predicted Timescales in the GISP2 and GRIP boreholes. This is where they get the ice cores from. It says our calculations show ice older than 200,000 years at 100 meters. This is what they were calculating, that this was going to be over 200,000 years old. Unfortunately, when they drilled down into it, they were wrong. It's only 100,000 years old, according to them. But the testable and observable science actually shows us that it's actually about 10,000 years old. So, and then I can get into the planes that there was the Lost Squadron that actually got buried in these snow drifts, and then they were buried under ice, and it was actually within the fern or under the fern layer. So it shows that it was actually in ice and not quote unquote snow. Very interesting question. Appreciate you bringing it up. But yeah, that's. I hope I answered your question directly. No, I use modern articles. Yep. I use modern articles. It just depends. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to. It just depends on what we're talking about, obviously. But I can't. There's not really a whole lot of modern articles that do a whole lot on the subjects that I'm interested in. For example, there are plenty of modern articles that talk about dinosaur soft tissue preservation. None of them, unless somebody has one because there's so many of them, I'm sure I haven't read them all, but none of them talk about the new degradation rate or giving you a half-life. Almost exclusively, they are postulating their idea about how it could happen. I don't care about their ideas. I read one today. I read a paper today that was done in like 2024 about iron cross-linking again in preserved dinosaur soft tissue, because I try to stay up with this stuff. But I don't bring it up because I don't care what they think or they postulate. Did you perform any tests? And in the paper I read today, they didn't perform any tests. They didn't make any calculations as far as the new half-life is concerned. So it's literally just reading a paper about what somebody thinks. That doesn't do me any good. So if you're going to, this is how it's supposed to work. Mary Schweitzer did this. I respect her. She's not a young earth creationist. I'm pretty sure she hates my guts. If she don't know me, but if she would, she don't like young earth creationists using her model or using her science. But the one thing I'll say about her is that she does it the way she's supposed to do it. When she comes out with a model, she'll do the science. What they did is they took ostrich blood that had iron in it, and they took a slab of meat, they put it on a control, and then they took another slab of meat, and then they doused it with iron-rich ostrich blood to see if you could get iron cross-linking. And the experiment lasted for over 2 years. Sure enough, they got the meat that was iron cross-link preserved a lot longer, but there's and in the paper it literally states it doesn't fit our current degradation models. So they did get the meat to preserve longer, but they did not get a new calculation for a decay rate. In other words, if DNA is supposed to last 65 million years, then you have to present a new decay rate. You can't say, I think this is the method, and then not present a decay rate. What's the new half-life on the DNA? Right? We know we can do testable, observable science says that the half-life of DNA in dinosaur bones now is about 521 years. I can give you the paper. But if you write a new paper saying you think it can get out to millions of years, but you don't provide a new half-life, or you don't do any tests to support your hypothesis, I don't care about that. It's literally just you writing a paper saying this is what I believe. I don't care about that. So that was answering the individual talking about only use papers from 15 years old. I can't help it that they're not really doing any newer science as far as giving us new half-lives or new decay rates. I can't help that. How long has humans roamed the earth in my view? Less than 10,000 years. But come on, guys. I don't mind engaging in the comments, but I'd much rather have a conversation with somebody. I think that's better than me just sitting here reading comments. But it is Friday, so most people are out partying. All right, let's see what we got, y'all. Okay, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up? How you doing? Are you good?
Doing good, brother. I hope you are.
Yeah, what's your name, man?
My name's William.
Nice to meet you, William. I'm Kai.
Nice to meet you.
I'll just start off by saying I'm probably the exact opposite of a young Earth creationist. So I may be the exact opposite person you're looking for, or I may be the right person you're looking for.
I'm looking for some ops. So what do you got, man?
The first question I always like to kind of lead with is, what do you believe? Do you believe that all the bones that were found of our alleged pre-hominid ancestors are all fake, fabricated, or do you believe we're mistaken rather than it's a conspiracy? Because I know I've met religious people who believe it's more of a conspiracy and the scientists appeared to say that, or they're lying. And I've met people who are just more on the case that they might just be a little bit confused or they've got it wrong. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, there's a little bit of both. There's clearly some fraud going on in a lot of these things because they're a lot, and this happens in any field. When you pay people to go find something, then they're encouraged to find that thing. And when they can, and the grant money starts running out, then they start manufacturing evidence. This is, one of the famous ones is, I forget, might be Piltdown Man or something like that, where it was actually a pig's tooth, and that's all they found was a tooth. So then it was printed on the front of National Geographic, where they showed a caveman and his wife, all because they found a tooth. And it turned out it was actually a pig's tooth. But they were so that, and clearly they don't have enough evidence to say that this was a caveman because they found a tooth. But they were so encouraged or so blinded by wanting to find evidence for evolution. And I can give you example after that. But I said that to say this. Some of them are frauds, but I wouldn't claim all of them are frauds. I think the problem that we see with those is some things that they're finding are clearly just humans. They're normal, everyday humans. They might have a different trait that's isolated. Like, for example, like I bring this up all the time, how the NBA used to go to Africa and look for the extremely tall. There was a specific tribe that they would go to because they had really tall individuals that were isolated in that tribe, because that trait of being really, really tall was kind of isolated in that tribe. So if you take a group of people and then put them by themselves, they might get trait isolations. This is microevolution, right? So Neanderthal, I think, is nothing more than a human. I think that's just a normal human that had certain traits that were isolated. Again, we share their DNA, they share our DNA. They're humans. But other things that they're doing is they're taking the shapes of these bones and they're putting assumptions on them. It's shapes and assumptions. So they're saying that, well, this Lucy or whatever they call it, or Australopithecine or whatever they call it, they look at it and go, well, this has some features that look kind of human, so therefore it had to be a pre-ancestor. Shapes and assumptions doesn't prove evolution.
yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that when we're kind of trying to picture the bones on the animal, there's definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, all the Jurassic Park films that we watched growing up, apparently all of those dinosaurs were all inaccurate, and that was what 20, 30 years ago. So like, I do get your point where these things, they seem to, a lot of times the scientists end up changing their mind after 20, 30 years, and I don't know, it's the other way around. So I do get
I'm not taking up for Jurassic Park, but a lot of them wouldn't. I mean, like the Velociraptor, clearly it was supposed to be an Ultraraptor or something. They just liked the name, so I would agree with you on that. But the Tyrannosaurus Rex was pretty accurate, with the exception of it probably had lips, and they had the Jurassic Park one had its teeth hanging out. But
do you believe do you believe dinosaurs existed?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love dinosaurs. They're mentioned in the Bible.
So how long ago do you believe dinosaurs were?
About 40. Well, I mean, I think obviously some of them got off the ark, but I'd say the vast majority of them unalived in the flood. That was 4,500 years ago.
And do you believe there's any evidence for a flood around 11,800 years ago?
I would say 4,500 years ago is when the flood happened, around that time.
I'm saying, do you think there is any evidence of a flood close to that scale around 11,800 years ago?
I would contend with the dating because I think the flood was 4,500 years ago. So to answer your question directly is no, I don't think it happened 11,000 years ago because I don't believe the earth was made 11,000 years ago.
All right, yeah, shit, I forgot. So you also believe the first? So do you believe the first humans were Adam and Eve? I'm guessing, of course.
Yes, sure.
So I no offense, but I'm astounded by somebody's ability to be a young Earth creationist in the 21st century. That might just be I don't know.
And I don't take it as an insult. I think it's astounding how people believe in evolution without any evidence for it. They just believe people that are smart. They think that people are smarter than them, so they go, "Okay, it's got to be real because you're really smart and you say this is true."
But exactly,
Will. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Would you argue there's more proof that Jesus Christ was a godly individual than there is that evolution is real?
Absolutely. All I would need is one piece of evidence that showed Jesus was real. I have that, and it would automatically be more evidence than evolution. Now, when I say evolution, clearly I'm talking about macroevolution because I believe in micro. So,
right. Well, what is this? What in your mind is what proof have you got that Jesus Christ was a godly individual?
Textual criticism. So. Some of your most atheistic scholars like Bart Ehrman and stuff, they look at the text and they look at the evidence and the archaeological evidence and they say if there's one thing that we can know for sure is that Jesus Christ was an actual individual who lived. He was a real man who lived and was executed by the Jews, right, or by Pontius Pilate, which on behalf of the Jews, I should say it that way. So that's pretty historical event. Now, the argument is did he raise from the dead? Now, clearly the atheistic authors don't believe that part, but here's my contention is all of the evidence that shows that Jesus was a real man is the same evidence that people are claiming. They're getting it from the same sources that say he was God. So if I'm giving you a source that you can test and observe about something, like, for example, if I'm giving you if I say that there was a worldwide flood, and here's all the evidence for it, if you can test and observe that and say that, okay, that's true, then why would you not believe my claim about something you probably couldn't test?
Well, because we can't fact check it. That's exactly because we can't fact check it. At the end of the day, we don't just listen to theories from thousands of years ago.
Well, we can look at circumstantial evidence and determine that it's true. For example, Luke was a physician. He was put in charge by a guy named it was either his name or his rank is Theophilus. So the book of Luke and the book of Acts was written to a man named Theophilus. So what happens is this individual started to look at Christianity and he wanted somebody to determine if it was true for him. We can see this literally in the book of Luke and Acts. It literally starts off by saying, that he is writing this for him. Luke says, I wasn't an eyewitness, I'm the investigator. So they send an investigator, which is what you would want, somebody that's unbiased and say, I want you to look into this Jesus character and tell me about these things that's going on. The time that Luke wrote these things was the time around the time when Jesus unalived and then rose from the dead again. So this wasn't 100 years later. It was during the time. So Luke shows up, he interviews eyewitnesses, right? And then he writes about it in the book of Luke and in the book of Acts. Now, the funny thing about these things is Luke is, because he's a doctor, he's very meticulous about writing down things that other people wouldn't think. Like he chronologies who put Paul on trial. He names them. He names their wives. He names their daughters. He names the individuals involved in these trials. We know that these individuals historically existed because we can look at Roman records and we can confirm this from outside the Bible. So in other words, these individuals that put Paul on trial for claiming that he had met the risen Christ on the road to Damascus, there were several of them. Because Luke mentions them, we can use an outside source to determine, yeah, these individuals was real people. He mentions them, he mentions their daughters, he mentions their wives. These individuals were living at the time that these letters were written. So in other words, if you were going to make up a lie about this Jesus character being alive, then you wouldn't say the local sheriff down here put Paul on trial for making these claims, because anyone could just go to the local sheriff and say, hey, there's this guy that's writing a book about this Jesus character, and he's claiming that you put him on trial for it. Is this true? Well, clearly, if that was true, Christianity would have died out overnight, because you could test it at the time because it was written around the time they were alive, right? So that gives validity to the fact that these individuals are not only historical individuals, but the early Christians could have literally went there and asked them about it. And clearly they would have. And because this was well known at the time, that's why Christianity skyrocketed. Christianity was heavily persecuted, right? The Romans made it illegal in the 300s. And if you were found with the manuscripts or anything, Paul was literally going around rounding up the Christians. He was doing that before his conversion on the road to Damascus. So there's plenty of evidence to support the resurrection of Christ, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm somewhat jealous that you can kind of believe it all, because it is it's something that I do think it would bring me great comfort to truly believe in, and it is something that if I one day do. So a lot of people describe like a moment where like they ultimately will not so much meet Christ, but like I don't know, like I've had a lot of friends, they just tell me one day it's like Jesus Christ has entered my life and he saved me, and I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know how to explain it, but I was praying or whatever it was, and like one of my best friends, for example, he just got on his knees, he was crying, and he asked God to help him help him solve his addiction and to get off a drug. And the next year he literally flushed his drugs down the toilet, and he never ever has touched them again. And he's been a Christian ever since, but like I don't imagine anything like that ever happening to me, and I don't believe that. I think it was the belief in himself that he could do it is what pushed him to do it. I don't personally believe that Christ actually came to him personally and helped him battle his addiction, because if there is a God, why is he wasting his time helping my friend battle an addiction when he could be helping a child escape a war zone? Or he could
God's big enough. God's big enough to do it all, but I don't want you to have an unrealistic expectation of God too. Well, yeah, God can do anything, but just because he doesn't, if he's helping one person, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have time for the other person. It's not how it works. But have you, when you say you don't believe this, have you tried it? Have you looked into it? We should test. There's nothing wrong with testing these things. Now, obviously, certain things is going to take faith because it's a miracle and you can't test it. But my faith is not without evidence, right? And I literally just went over that with you in the Bible, about the Bible and about the evidence that shows that Jesus is clearly, God. The Romans could have produced a body, right? At any time during this time, the Romans could have produced the body and Christianity would have been done. It would have been over with, right? So the evidence shows that clearly the Jews did not want Jesus around because he was running around claiming to be the Messiah. It made them so mad that they let Barnabas go, a murderer, right, in an effort to make sure that Jesus was crucified. It's literally documented that they said, this man's claiming that he will rise again in 3 days, so we need you Romans, we want you to guard the tomb. So if these stories were false, and none of this happened as far as the Romans guarding the tomb and all of these things, then why didn't they just produce the body? They could have just produced the body and Christianity would have been done overnight. How do you have all of these witnesses who are claiming that, yes, they did see this risen Christ?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, these witnesses, all these witnesses did was tell somebody else, and that person wrote it into a book, or rather, that person told their son, and then that person their son, and then whatever happened. But at the end of the day, these people, these eyewitnesses, You are not reading the paper which they wrote on today. You are reading a paper which has been rewrote over thousands and thousands. Well, not thousands and thousands, but
Well, there.
you understand where I'm coming from.
I got
You
you.
can't- I don't really
So you made.
understand how you can sit here and talk about evidence when the evidence that is on this earth does not lead us to believe that the earth is
Okay. Well, you made a
less
you
than
made a claim
10,000
there.
years old.
So I'd like for you to support that claim because you made a claim that I don't think is true at all. And you said that it's been changed over thousands of years. Or I know you didn't mean thousands of years, but that's why you kind of corrected yourself. But the exact opposite is true. We can actually see that the Bible was an open transmission and it hasn't changed. So when people come up, they always make this internet argument. The Bible's been changed because they expect that because it's quote unquote written by man. So they go into it having this preconceived notion that if a book is written by man and it's copied several times, then all of these individuals all over the world had their hands in it, then it should change. Well, by that standard that you have, I can show you the Bible hasn't changed. The stories that they wrote down back then are the same stories now. It hasn't changed.
I mean, it's pretty
So-
hard. It's pretty hard for them to change. But there was, let's be like in say the
Come on,
7th
brother.
century.
Come on, brother. Which
century,
one's your... See, now, this is the problem that I have. I love having good conversations with people, and I want to share Christ with you. But you literally just claimed... You changed your claim in 3 seconds. First, it was changed, and then you said it would be hard to change. When I talk to people like that, they don't have any desire for truth. You're not looking for truth. You're looking to win an argument, or you're trying to say that my side is right. You literally just changed your claim in 2 seconds. You went from it's been changed, and the moment I'm telling you that I'm contending with that and said it hasn't been changed, you literally just changed your argument. That's not an honest conversation. That's just you trying to win an argument.
I never said that it hadn't been changed. I literally just said in the 7th century, and then we'll kind of.
That was clearly your implication, brother, because you accidentally said for thousands of years and then you phrased it. That's clearly the implication is that you were making is that the Bible's been written by man and it's been changed. That was the implication that anyone in here could come to the same conclusion.
Well, that is my belief. The Bible is not the unutterable word of God. It was written by a man, written by men.
Okay,
rather.
well, if it's written by men, which I would agree with you is written by men, I don't believe God wrote it. We believe that he divinely inspired people through the Holy Spirit. But if this is true, then you would expect it to change, right? This is like the telephone game. If the Bible was an open transmission, meaning that it was copies of copies of copies of copies of copies of copies. You know, some copies went to the Middle East, some copies went to Asia, some copies went over to Greece, some copies went to Italy, and we can determine all around the Mediterranean, all these copies went there. So why is it that I can go to the Mediterranean copy and I can compare it to the Asian copy? I can compare it to the Jewish copy. I can compare it to all of these different copies, and they say the same thing, and they might be 1,000 years apart from each other. So why is that? If it's an open transmission, meaning that anyone's allowed to change it if they want to, because it's just copying, why? That's what you should expect, but it didn't. It didn't change.
That is inherently historically inaccurate. As I was about to say, in the 7th century, the Catholics quite literally decided for the entire world that orthodoxy was the only way. Over time, more and more sects of Christianity, like Gnosticism, people were taking the Bible, changing it, and creating.
Can you give me an
different
example
sects.
where they changed the Bible? Give me an example where they changed the
Well,
Bible.
I'll give you an example. The Gnostic text. The Gnostics believed, for example, that the Old Testament was a demiurge or some kind of. I'm not. It was a while since I read it, but like I said, it's different kind of.
Yeah, but where did they
sects of
change the
Christianity.
Bible, though? I'm not worried about what they believe. I want to know where the Bible got changed.
Well, these different sects of Christianity, what do you believe made them different? Obviously, they altered. The
People
religion
go off
in
into
time.
their own. People go off into their own sects, if you will, because of their belief system in the Bible. They believe it reads this way or this way. Like, you know, just for example, water baptism is one of them. They don't change the words of the Bible. The Bible's still the Bible.
Yes, but I'm saying
They just interpret it differently.
No, but there used to be sects that did change the Bible. This is why.
Give me an
these
example.
sects-
Well, give me an example so I can contend with that. What did they change about it? What did it say before and what did it say after?
They completely disregarded the Old Testament, and they were all hunted down and murdered by Christians. Christians
That doesn't mean that they
in the entire world.
discarding something is not changing it. It just say you don't agree with it. The Catholics have a different canonical version of the Bible than I do. I have 66 books. They got 70 something, right? If you want to go to those texts, they're still preserved. You can still go to those texts. So it just because I believe in this canon and they believe in that canon, it's still the same. Like there's no disagreement about the 66, right? But some of them believe that some of these other ones, for example, like the Book of Enoch. I do not believe the Book of Enoch is scripture, right? But if you do, it hasn't changed. You can still go to the Book of Enoch. I can give you an example about why the early Jews didn't consider it to be canonical, and it's just a book, not scripture, right? And I can do this with the other ones, but that's not the Book of Enoch hasn't quote unquote been changed. So I think you're comparing apples and oranges in here. Just because somebody didn't believe in the Old Testament doesn't mean they changed the Bible. It just means they just disregarded that part. You have to show me where they changed things, because you can still go to the Old Testament today.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. They've fundamentally changed Christianity. Their writings, their teachings, everything about it was changed.
Okay, you can't give me an example though.
I think my beliefs. I've read parts of both the Old Testament and the New Testament, and I personally don't believe it's two halves of a very, very, very large.
That's just hearsay, brother.
And I think you
That's
can't.
just-
you can't just put
I got you, but here's what I need though, man. Here's what I need. I need some Cyphers, or however you say your name down there. You keep talking about the woman caught in adultery. I promise you I can answer that, but if you want to come up and have the conversation, come up and have the conversation, because I'm having it with somebody else right now. I can answer that very, very, very easily. But I just need you, Kyle, to support that statement of the Bible's been changed, or I need you to back off of that statement. You can say, I don't know is a perfectly reasonable answer, but you keep stating that the Bible's been changed, but so far you really haven't brought anything other than some other people disregarded the Old Testament. Okay, that means they didn't believe in it, but that's not the same as change.
Well, brother, on that part, I will correct myself. I would say that I would definitely be open to the possibility that it's been changed. I just don't understand how you can say with 100% certainty. I know what you're going to say, but I don't think what you're going to say and what you say is basically what other Christians say when that question is posed. And I personally don't believe that is a valid explanation, and that's just my opinion.
Well, that's fair. Now you word it that way. That's you can have that, and we can contend with the evidence. But not being able to support a claim is different. But I do appreciate that's a reasonable argument to have. Six King, what's up, man? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kyle.
If I've made any absolute statements, I'll resign them now. Obviously, I'm just kind of letting things roll off the tongue and not really thinking too much about what I'm saying.
Oh, you're right, man.
I'm just kind of having I'm not really. I don't really like to think of these things as debates, because I don't really think that's good for anybody. I think it's much more healthy to try and find some kind of middle ground.
I appreciate it,
with
man.
one thing that he said, and then you can kick me down.
Go ahead.
One thing that he did say is that witnesses pass it on to witnesses, and they so on and so forth. But while that's true, he just made it. His implication was they just barely passed it on. He doesn't realize that every disciple except one was brutally tortured for their beliefs, and at any time they could have falsified their belief and saved their life.
Gladly, they were happy about it.
Yeah, good point.
As a matter of fact, some of the Romans were affected by the faith of some of those Christians. If you read in the Fox's Book of Martyrs, it says that one of those Roman soldiers actually he denounced his Romanism, and for the lack of a better word, and became a Christian. He was so overcome by the faith of one of the disciples that was on trial about to be killed.
The one who put the spear through Christ's side, I heard actually also changed and became a Christian as well.
Yeah.
you know, there's a couple of things, and you know, it might sound like I'll side with him. I hope you guys can hear me, okay?
I can hear you.
It has been changed. It's been written and rewritten. You know,
You got an
into
example?
many different languages. Yeah, like I mean, you know, there's a difference between our English and you know King James, the Elizabethan
Well,
English or whatever. But
I
it's
don't.
not.
Let me.
It's been,
Before you go, I'm going to let you speak. I promise. But before you go, let's make sure we define our terms. There is a difference between translation and change. I would agree with you that there's different translations, but that's not the same to say that there's change. The original King James was written in Old English. I can't read Old English, so yes, and languages change. Like for example, you can read in the Bible where it says, when God told Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply, He said, "Replenish the earth." So a lot of pre-Adamite society come in and go, "Oh, the word replenish means to fill again." But the word has changed, because if you look at the Old English dictionary, replenish meant just to fill once. The meaning has changed now. So if you get a modern Bible now, it says to fill the earth. It's the same thing. It's not, the Bible hasn't changed. It's our wording in an effort to describe what the Bible is saying has changed.
excellent point. Excellent point. So it has, and then you know a lot of
Okay.
people they go, oh well, I don't believe in the Bible because of telephone, the game telephone, and what they don't really realize is that the scribes and things, they would count the spaces, they would count all the letters, and then they would measure meticulously. The spaces where they were going to add the words in, and so you had to be a scribe or a somebody or a historian back then, or to replicate the Bible, you had to first go through replicating other books just to learn to get to the point where you're able to even handle the tools in doing that. It was not just a simple, oh, well, and then he went over here and took a poop,
Yeah.
It was, measure the letters, how many words, how many spaces, how many, apostrophes and of course they didn't have those because
Yeah.
it was a different language.
So we can
But
see that
it-
through
it-
that, because of that,
Yeah.
we have so many of the Bibles, we can see that it hasn't changed.
Over 22,000 manuscripts.
Yeah. So there was a guy earlier mentioned about the woman caught in adultery. So let me show you guys what I mean when we can look at the textual criticism and say that the Bible hasn't been changed. Now, when I say the Bible hasn't been changed, do I mean that every single manuscript ever somebody didn't try to change it? No, of course they did. We see this in church history. There's Codex Sinaiticus and Vaticanus and Codex Alexandrinus. These books were from the Alexandrian manuscript, and they went off into Alexandrian Egypt, and they tried in an effort to change the Bible. They tried to take some of the stories out. They didn't like some of the stories. For example, the woman caught in adultery. They didn't like the fact that Jesus forgave this woman without any punishment. And this was a male-dominated society, so they didn't like the fact that the women could read the Bible and see that there was no punishment for their sin of being adulterous, so they tried to take it out of the Bible. We know that the early Christians did not accept the Alexandrian manuscript because the majority text principle comes from the Byzantine, not the Alexandrian. The Alexandrian was quote-unquote lost to time and it's only had to be rediscovered recently. One of them is Codex Vaticanus. This was in the Vatican Library and it has been quote-unquote rediscovered. But we literally have early church fathers as quoting to say, don't use this one. Don't use this one. So to the person that stated about the woman caught in adultery, it's not in, because the Alexandrian wasn't accepted, meaning the Christians didn't copy off of it, they got put in storage and they never got copied. They didn't get used. So they lasted longer. So the earliest manuscripts that we have today are from the Alexandrian manuscript tradition. They lasted longer because they didn't get used. So now, 20th century, people come in and say, whoa, these are the oldest. Because these are the oldest, they're closer to the source material. But what we do have is evidence that clearly shows the exact opposite of that. Let me give you an example. The earliest woman caught in adultery. So the oldest Bibles that we have are from the Alexandrian manuscript. They're in 300 AD. Clearly, we know that the Bibles themselves are earlier than that, but the oldest surviving ones are from 300 AD. But we have quotes from earlier church fathers. I can give you Papias, or Papias, however you say it. He wrote in 120 AD. This is 120. This is 150 years before the Alexandrian manuscripts, 150 years. And it says he wrote, mentioned in a story about the woman caught in adultery before Jesus. The reports came from Irenaeus and his work in the essential book. It's book number 3, chapter number 39. I give you all the references. I do a study on this. Feel free to go to my page so you can actually see the study on this. But he says, a woman caught in adultery accused of many sins before the Lord. And he states that, where's the exact quote? Certain persons of little faith, or rather enemies of the true faith, fearing that their wives should be given impunity in sinning, removed it from their manuscripts. So this individual literally quotes that they removed it from the manuscripts. So Papias mentions in 120 AD, he mentions the story of the woman caught in adultery. So we know the woman caught in adultery. We know this story predates the Alexandrian manuscripts. And then you go to Augustine of Hippo. He wrote this in 400 AD, which is at the time of the Alexandrian manuscript. So I got 2 different sources here. The first source is Papias. He wrote in 120 AD of the woman caught in adultery. So when people say that the Alexandrian manuscripts didn't have the woman caught in adultery, so later manuscripts added it, they are wrong. And the reason that we know that they're wrong is because it's literally quoted in 120 AD. It's quoted before the manuscripts existed, as far as the Alexandrian. So we know the story's quoted. Now we have somebody called Hippo, Augustine of Hippo. He wrote at the same time of the Alexandrian manuscripts. He quote states they removed it because they didn't want their wives to read the story and not fear sinning. So they tried to take it out. Now there's other things like my brother just mentioned about how the scribes would measure the words on the page. That's true. Because back then you couldn't just take a piece of paper and crumble it up and throw it away, because this was very, very, very expensive. You had to buy the paper. You had to buy the ink. You had to pay the scribe, right? Codex Sinaiticus was written on leather, meaning that they had to buy the sheep. They had to buy the tanning material to tan the leather. This wasn't like you can just go to the local store and get all of these things back then. So scholars imagine going through all of this manual labor and stuff. This cost somebody in what would be today $1 million in today's economy, buying all of these things to create the Bible called Codex Sinaiticus. And the longer ending of Mark. So I already mentioned about the woman caught in adultery. There's another part where the Bible claims, or some people try to claim, that the longer ending of Mark was added. You can go to Codex Sinaiticus, and like my brother mentioned, the scribes would measure the words to make sure that it fit on the page, to know how much paper they had to buy. So the process was cheap. And they would measure it to make sure that it fit on the page. You can go to Codex Sinaiticus right now and you can look at the ending of Mark. There is an entire space left out of Mark, meaning that when the scribes were scribing it down, they left out a space in the Bible. The reason why they left the space out, and see right here, you see Cephas down there. He says 1,000% the ending of Mark was later added. So watch this, brother. I'm about to show you this. Watch this right here. If you think the longer ending of Mark was added, then why did the scribe in Codex Sinaiticus leave the exact space for the longer ending of Mark? We know that they measured the words to make sure that it fit on the page. We know that when they started the next thing, they left the space for the longer ending of Mark. This means that whatever they were copying off of clearly had the longer ending of Mark. They knew about it. They knew it was real. They chose to leave it out. This is I can show you I would turn my camera around right now, but you can go to codexsinaiticus.com and you can look at it. But anytime I turn my camera around, TikTok hates on me. It says I'm using an outside source. But I'm looking at it right here. The longer ending of Mark has a space in Codex Sinaiticus where the scribe left it out, right? That shows you that whatever he was copying from had the longer ending of Mark because he left enough space to add it later if he wanted to. And I don't know if if the scribe unalived or what happened. For whatever reason, he left it out. But it is not accurate to say that the longer ending of Mark was added. It's accurate to say that the longer ending of Mark was taken out. It was taken out by Sinaiticus.
If I could add that, we have Justin Martyr also quoting the longer ending of Mark way before the what do you call it, Codex Sinaiticus?
Yeah. Yeah, you have longer ending of Mark, the evidence that it was removed in 174 to 189 AD. Irenaeus quotes Mark 16:19 in his work Against Heresies. The book 3, chapter 10.5, he quotes Mark 19. So then after the Lord Jesus had spoken to them, he received up into heaven and sits at the right hand of God. So when you say that the longer ending of Mark wasn't there, then how do you have people quote unquote quoting it in the 100s? So the oldest one is 300 years old, was written in 300 AD, I should say. 300 AD is when Codex Sinaiticus and Vaticanus and these were written, the Alexandrian manuscript. How do you have somebody quoting it in 174 AD? You can't have somebody quoting it if the later manuscripts added it. So we see that the Alexandrian didn't add it, or I'm sorry, didn't add it. They took it out.
Yeah.
So your point, Synopsis, is you're totally incorrect about this. I know that a lot of atheistic scholars love to bring this up like it was, but the evidence just doesn't support them. It doesn't. In the 2nd century, 170 AD, evidence suggests that the longer ending of Mark was known in some form around this time, likely in Syria. Again, my man just mentioned Justin Martyr in the second century alluded to Mark 16:20. So you got people alluding to that they know about it, and then in 174 AD, you literally have somebody quoting it. So again, they can't quote it if it's not written down. The Alexandrian manuscripts left them out.
Look, Justin Martyr quotes it in 155 AD.
Okay. If he does, I have all of my references over here. You may have something that I don't know about that I haven't referenced, because I try to keep it short too, because I got to keep the teachings below like 45 minutes when I do it on TikTok. So there's probably some evidence that I left out in an effort to shorten it.
No, I'm trying
but
to
this
check
right
it
here
out.
is just what I'm referencing.
I'm just showing you, like, just in case he said, "Oh, that's long." We have somebody even before that quoting it.
Yeah, you can go check. You can check these out. The scholars, something they don't is ridiculous. I don't know what that means. The scholars, something they don't is ridiculous. That you might have to write that down again, brother. That sentence doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I've clearly refuted you with the evidence. You can't say that the Bible later added it when you have people that are quoting it that predate the Alexandrian removing it. The evidence clearly points to the Alexandrian manuscripts attempted to move it. So when I say the Bible hasn't been changed, that's what I'm talking about. The Bible hasn't been changed. The early Christians didn't accept the Alexandrian. It was left in the Vatican, and it was quote unquote lost to the sands of time, if you will. It's only the 20th century that people come up and see the Alexandrian manuscripts and they go, whoa, it's a new version of the Bible. No, it's not. The Christians didn't accept it. That's why it, quote unquote, went out, because the Christians went, nah, man, you guys are trying to change the Bible. And we know this because the early Christians are literally quoting that people are trying to take this out. And because the one thing I will agree with on my Catholic friends is saying is that the early church prevented a lot of this stuff from happening. When I say early church, I mean early Christians. They're like, nah, we ain't accepting this. This is not what you're trying to add to the Bible. We're not accepting this.
Like the person you're quoting, Irenaeus, his one job was to defend against heresies.
Yeah.
Another really big go-to nowadays you're hearing a lot of, it's ridiculous, is the apocryphal. People are hounding about the apocryphal and how the Ethiopian Bible has the apocryphal and all the books, and the canon was taken out. It's such a conspiracy, and so I try to explain to people that this is books more so about mysticism and not things that necessarily have to do with Christ, but that it's about things. Now, that's not to say they don't have any merit somewhere, somehow, but the Bible was condensed down into solely Christ. Faith alone, through grace alone, and Christ alone. Or, yeah. So explaining that to people when they're, trying to make a big conspiracy out of it.
Absolutely. So I see Core Voice down there. It says Ethiopian Bible is untouched by Rome. Well, so is our Bible. Rome didn't, quote unquote, touch our Bible. The canon of the Bible was decided by the Christians before there was any council got put together. Now the councils got together and affirmed what the Christians already had. So when people get together and say that these councils got together and voted on, decided what was going to be in the Bible or taken out of the Bible, that's not true at all. Now there is arguments amongst the Christians and the Protestants and Catholics about what's canonical, but I would still argue that hasn't changed, because you can, if you believe that these books are scripture, you can still go get them. They're not changed. You can still look at the manuscripts and go get them. It's just they argue about what's scripture and what's not scripture.
Creation, another good one for like people that argue we made the Bible. The dude you quoted, Irenaeus, he quotes all 4 Gospels close to 200 years before we ever have a council. He quotes Mark wrote Mark, Luke wrote Luke, John wrote John.
Yep. And now there's this big movement amongst the atheistic scholars to say that because Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John didn't sign their names to it, that they didn't write them. But literally there's all of history says Matthew wrote Matthew, Mark wrote Mark. It's only when the 20th century atheists come up go, you know what? I do think that there was one. I might have misquoted. There was one individual who claimed maybe in the 600s or something like that somebody else wrote something. I can't remember exactly. But the overwhelming majority of history, with the exception of one individual, the Gospels were always contributed to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. No one else. But now new atheists come up and they go, oh, we got to find a hole in this because it can't be the Word of God. So Matthew didn't sign his name on it, so therefore Matthew didn't write it, which is an outrageously silly argument. Yeah. I got another one too, the common Johannum, where it says the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. These 3 are one. The Holy Spirit doesn't seem to have a problem with the Bible. So it says these 3 are one. Again, people will try to say that this was later added by Christians trying to strengthen the Trinity, the Trinitarian viewpoint. Because the Alexandrian manuscripts doesn't have the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, these 3 are one. It's not in Codex Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, and Alexandrius. And because it's not in the earliest ones, they say, well, no, therefore that means that it was later added in. The only problem is that you have, before Codex Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, and Alexandrian, you have the verse literally being quoted verbatim again. So again, people are quoting it in 251 AD, which is before Alexandrian manuscripts were written. You literally have it being quoted verbatim. The Lord says, I and the Father are one. And again, it is written, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, these 3 are one. So it's literally quoted before the Alexandrian manuscripts. So there you have clear evidence that the Alexandrian manuscripts tried to remove it. The early Christians didn't accept it. 2,000 years later, atheists look at it now and go, whoa, our oldest manuscripts don't have it, so therefore that meant later they added it in. No, it doesn't. You got church fathers that quoted it way before the Alexandrian existed.
Yeah, most apostolic churches agree that pretty much the whole New Testament was pretty much already agreed upon before we ever had a council.
Yeah.
Is anybody here familiar with the Epic of Gilgamesh?
I know a little bit about it.
I would like to get your opinion on why there is a story much older than the tales of the Bible that has an almost identical flood myth. To me, that is partial evidence for the flood of the biblical flood being a recycled mythological. Well, not mythological. I'm not disputing that there was a massive flood, but I just think that it might be a recycled tale.
Yeah, I got you. So there's no actual evidence that the Hebrews actually took any from the Epic of Gilgamesh. And the reason that we know this is one of the reasons that we know this is one, there's no direct linkage. And two, the reason that we know this is because we know that the flood story, quote unquote, predated either culture telling it. The Epic of Gilgamesh is actually the third oldest. The Bible's the fourth oldest, or youngest, if you will, however you want to look at that. So there's two other stories that actually predate the Epic of Gilgamesh. Epic of Gilgamesh is not even the oldest. It's just older than the Bible's telling because it survived. One reason is because the Samaritans used clay uniform tablets. They would tell their story on clay and then fire it so that it was like rock, right? It was like a brick. And that's why it lasted longer. The Jews, or quote unquote the Hebrews, what they would do is they would write on a grass type material called papyri. So clearly that's not going to last as long. So it is true to say that the Epic of Gilgamesh's rock is older than the oldest Hebrew that we have. It's not true to say that because of that it is the oldest. We don't know because papyri clearly wouldn't last as longer. So it could be the fact that the Jews actually told the story first. We don't know that. But even if I was to grant you, for the sake of argument, that the Epic of Gilgamesh is 100% archaeologically proven that it's older than the Hebrews, that's fine. I can contend with that because we know that they did not steal from it. And the reason that we know that is because the story predated both cultures telling the story. The reason that we know this is because you have people groups that split off. You have the Polynesian people that split off. You have the people then stuff that went to Hawaii and things of this nature. And then you have the Asian people that split off and went towards China. Their divergent people group happened before the Epic of Gilgamesh was written down, right? And we know that the stories, like, for example, you have the Chinese, the Hmong people wrote down Nua, made a boat of wood. His brother made a boat of iron. One of them sank. One of them lived. One of them floated. The one that floated, he got all of two of each kind of animal, put them on the boat, and saved them from a worldwide flood. And his name was Nua. And then you have the Hawaiian people that have the story of Nu'u. Nu'u made a great canoe, put all of the animals on the canoe, and saved the world from the God's wrath of flooding the world. We know that these flood stories, who have the same name, Noah, right, just pronounced a little bit different and spelled different, these individuals who have the same story, they clearly didn't get it from the Epic of Gilgamesh. So we know that the story itself predated the Epic of Gilgamesh writing it down. So the conclusion that we're coming to is that this story is older, so therefore the Bible stole from it, has no scientific argument to support it whatsoever. The exact opposite is actually, we can show the exact opposite, because then you would have to say, how did the Hmongs who are in China, how did they steal from the Epic of Gilgamesh? Because the Epic of Gilgamesh was written down after the people group split. How did the Hawaiians steal from the Epic of Gilgamesh? Because clearly they're the Polynesian people, they split. And you can see this story is permeated all over the world. So much so that scientists have to, they know a flood happened. They absolutely know a flood happened. They just try to put it towards different events, like the Younger Dryas or stuff like this. There's so much evidence for a flood that no one can overlook it that's scientifically inclined. If you're an honest person, you can't overlook the evidence. So what they're trying to do is just say the evidence points to something else, like the Younger Dryas or something like this. But that was me trying to answer your question very directly, brother.
Yeah, well, obviously, it's funny that you bring up the Younger Dryas, because I am actually a believer in the Younger Dryas theory, and I don't believe the evidence is, well, whatever you believe it is, made up, whatever.
I think you should look into this, brother. I don't have no problem with you. Asking questions or anything like that. I would, but I think you should look it up a little bit, because I'm not the arbiter of truth here. I didn't make up any of this stuff. I found all this stuff through doing research. I can do my own research and find out that clearly they didn't steal from the Epic of Gilgamesh, because there's no one-for-one cross-link there. And two, we can understand that the story's clearly predated, and the Chinese didn't steal from it. So my question is how do all these people groups all over the world, thousands upon thousands, Native Americans, Indians, you have Chinese people, Japan, you have all of these different people groups all over the world having this one story where people got on a boat with the animals and saved them from a worldwide flood? How did this story permeate all over the world if it was just local floods?
Snake says that maybe perhaps they were all schizophrenic. Well, pyramids under the ocean, whole cities,
Now I'm confused.
giant roads,
That was a bit of a
things like
segue.
that under the ocean all point towards a civilization that was flooded at one point. And then when you look at the Roman bathhouses, or not bathhouses, the Roman ponds that are on the shores of conquered lands, the water level hasn't moved. So if the water level hasn't moved, then what's up?
I don't think our conversation has took
I was-
quite a U-turn like that so far.
No, I was
That was quite a
laughing at
U-turn.
your comment you made that Snake says, and he does. You're right. He says no matter who the first ones to write it down, it doesn't mean that God exists. Maybe they were all schizophrenic. So now you're going to have to explain how schizophrenic people all over the world come up with the same story. Guys, this is
They don't want the truth, brother. They keep finding
know.
ways to move the goalposts, man. That's how they are,
But
brother.
here's-
They don't want the truth.
Yeah. But here's what I would do, right? If I was an atheist, one of the things that I would do is I would write it down and then read it to myself in my head before I said it out loud. Because, Snake, you didn't think about that at all. You didn't think about, hey, maybe I'll say these individuals that come up with the flood is schizophrenic. So now you're going to have to explain how schizophrenic people all over the planet came up with the identical same story. That's crazy.
Make it short.
That's crazy.
Make it short, host. We can make it real short. Watch this, host. Two people can never hallucinate about the same thing at the same time.
Exactly,
It
brother.
is scientifically proven that two people can never have the same thought at the same time because two electrons can never occupy the same area at the same time. So because of that, electrical signals cannot ever sync up. So two people can never ever have an identical hallucination at the same time.
Wow.
Because brains are electrical signals.
Wow.
Yeah, your
Get 'em,
brain's
AZ.
electrical signals.
Get him, AZ. Get him.
Yep.
Get him.
You can never do it. If you see something, the next person next to you can hallucinate, but they can never hallucinate what you hallucinated.
You know what
I
I,
usually
find
get that-
interesting with the British guy, or I think he's Irish or British or whatever he is. How come you guys never research both sides of the story? How come it's always the what the atheists say that you guys run with instead of looking at both sides of the problem or both sides of the equation? You always go to the atheist because you want it to support your worldview instead of looking. If you're honest with yourself, you look at both sides of the story and see which one makes the most sense.
I can
Definitely have done that, and I've read the Bible, and to me,
No.
it makes
I'm
fuck
talking
all
about the
sense.
research, brother. The research for why when you come upon a Bible difficulty, when you face a Bible difficulty, or you come where somebody poses a question, or you have a question about something, how come you don't look at both sides? Because something is wrong. If we're getting the right answer and you're not getting the right answer, something's wrong. Something's wrong there. I mean, I'm confused.
I got
To
one
you
question,
guys,
though.
the right
One
answer
question,
is
though.
that the
When
Earth
people-
is less than 10,000
so-
years old, which is the wrong answer.
So first of all,
But
don't say
I'm
you
not gonna
guys.
move on.
Don't say
on,
you
guys,
guys.
hold
Hold on. Okay, would you tell us to hold on? Okay, well, I was gonna simply say this: when you make this statement and you all try to be scientific, every single time on every single live I've ever pulled you into a scientific debate, I find you atheists wanting. Now, if you're going to give me a scientific explanation for how life will come from non-life, how proteins and RNA will spawn from the elements, I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it. But I already know what's going to happen. I'm going to bring up chirality. You're not going to know what chirality means, and the argument's going to be over. But any one of you atheists, I challenge you right now to give me a scientific explanation for how elements, proteins, how elements come together and make proteins or RNA. I challenge you with that because the two main abiogenic arguments are protein world and RNA world. So I need a scientific explanation for how elements come together and make proteins. And
Any
RNA
atheists
molecules.
in the live are free to answer if they want. I never claimed to be an atheist, nor am I an atheist.
No, I got you, Kyle. Listen, man, you've been a great conversation, dude. I appreciate having a conversation with you. You've been reasonable. So, yeah. What I think what. Yeah, like what Tony and stuff was talking about was when he says that most people don't do the research. I get that all. I mean, like I've had people come up here, and it's okay to ask questions. I don't mind asking questions. There's a difference between asking a question and then trying to use an argument. So if you're asking a question like you have been doing, I don't mind answering it. But when somebody try to use an argument and they haven't done the research, it just makes them look silly. Like I get constantly, did Noah? What did he do with the lions on the ark? Would they not eat the rabbits? You can literally just do a Google search about how Noah, what Noah did on the ark, and Google is not a young Earth creationist. But the first thing it says is, I just typed this in while y'all were talking. I said, how did Noah have carnivores on the ark? And it says literally what I've been saying up here. It says, young Earth creationist explanation is, many young Earth creationist argument is that the animals did not necessarily eat meat before the fall. Genesis 1:29 through 30. Behold, I have given you every herb yielding seed, and to you it shall be meat. And to every beast of the earth I have given every green herb for meat. So my point is that they can just do a quick Google search before they come up here and use a bad argument against the Bible. You can say you don't believe it, but if you're trying to disprove the Bible, then an argument shouldn't be what did the carnivores not. It's clearly they haven't done research and they're just coming up here trying to contend against the Bible that they've never read. So that's what I mean by when I say stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, my objections to the Bible and to religion in general are they're not just literal objections. They're more so moral objections, as well. Like I do not believe the God of the Bible, even if he does turn out to be real, and one day I have to come face to face with him. I will most likely, unless I'm absolutely terrified, I'll probably tell him that I never believed he was worthy of worship, and that's why I didn't worship him.
Oh, you won't be. Trust me, you won't be saying that, brother. You'll be on your knees. Trust me.
Well, we'll see, brother. I mean, I think it's going to be darkness, but
yeah, you see. Yeah, but show me your passport. Show me your passport to the other side, brother. If you think that's the case, give me your pass. Show me the passport that you've been to the other side.
Well, I'd say
that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
All right, so I usually try to. Guys, I've let up a lot of Christians up here, so I don't want it to be Christians dogpiling one. So I've let some Christians up here because I am getting kind of towards the end of my life, so that's why I've let some up. But what I want it to be an open conversation, but I don't want it to seem like it's a lot of Christians against one atheist.
I'd like what did that other dude just say about some kind of passport or something? What that sounded like the stupidest argument I've ever heard. Repeat that, please.
Well, we're getting away from that argument. If you have an argument you'd like to make, that's literally, I'm trying to control the live now, so that it doesn't seem like they're dogpiling anybody. So, Dale, if you have an argument that you'd like to bring.
No, Will, can I just say this real quick? I asked him, where's his passport? I wasn't really saying, I was asking, it's a euphemism. Since you think that nothing's on the other side, brother, give me proof that there's nothing on the other side. Who's come back from the dead that you know that said that there's nothing on the other side? That's what I'm trying to get you to see.
But do you understand that you're the one making the assumption that there is something?
And I have proof. I have proof. I have proof, brother. We have NDEs. We have the testimonials of millions of people, thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that have had the same experience. So where is your evidence, my brother, other than saying, oh, that's not true?
Yeah, but what would you say about people who've died and seen a big snake? Or what would you say to people who've died?
I'm not talking about people that have died and had a big snake. I'm talking about the majority of people that have died and had the same exact experience. Please explain to me how that happened.
Brother, that is something
especially from people that don't even believe. Hold on, brother. Especially for people that don't even believe. Hold on. Especially for people that don't even believe in heaven or hell. Please explain that.
What are you wanting me to explain?
Never mind, brother. Never mind.
Hold up, I can ask him something.
All right.
Why do you think the God of the Bible is not worthy of worship?
Well,
hold on. Hold on. The reason why I wanted to interrupt that right there is because you guys know I don't do the emotional arguments on my page here. And so he was stating an emotional argument. If he ever meets God, he's going to tell him that he wasn't worthy of worship. That's fine, but I just don't do the emotional arguments on my page because that's all. There's a million TikToks out there of people crying, and I say it again, and I'm trying to be. The emotional arguments are just not worth my time because you can believe God is mean, but that still God exists. I just don't have time to soak up all of the tears in here from all the people crying God's mean. So if you think God is mean, then you still believe in God. So that argument is silly to me. That's why I don't do the emotional argument stuff. So Dale, you say you had an argument you wanted to bring. Dale, what's up, man? You got an argument you would like to bring? He was just talking. Dale going once. Dale going twice. All right. Well, I mean, that's kind of weird. But yeah, and it's no disrespect to you, 6K. I mean, like I said, I think I've had a reasonable conversation with you, but I just don't do the emotional argument stuff, man.
But I don't understand how it's an emotional argument. It's more of a moral. It's not me. It's not. There's not any emotion when I say he's not worthy of worship. It's just a fact.
That's literally what that is. Like so it's called an appeal to an emotion, right? So there's a difference between. So I talk about is God real and stuff like that. So even if I think you're conceding, okay, God is real, but now he's just mean.
No, but I'm not.
Okay, well, if you want to,
I'm saying if
there you go. My point is, and don't look to the point. Here's the point. My point is that if God is mean, then he's still God, right? And for you to say that God is mean, you would have to concede that he is God to be mean. So my point is that when you say that God unalived all the innocent babies in the flood, when people bring that argument, I don't mind answering. This is why it's not one of my rules. I don't mind answering legitimate questions. But if it's an argument, that's a fallacy because you're appealing to an emotion. It doesn't disprove God if he's mean. It's just mean that he would be mean. God could be real and also be extremely mean as far as the paradox is concerned. So I don't care. I don't care if you think that he's mean. That's why I don't do the emotional argument stuff here, because now you're just trying to win on a moral high ground, but you don't have any moral standard to appeal to. If you think God is mean, are you saying that he's mean? Is that based on an objective standard or a subjective standard? Who is the one that decides he's mean? And then you get off into a whole nother thing. You can't call God mean without an objective standard. And God is the objective standard. And if God is the objective standard, then by definition, he can't be mean because he's the objection. But I just don't do that emotional stuff, right?
I'll tell you, I know it can be, this life is overwhelming with a lot of messed up stuff happening, and then we don't have a whole lot of control over it. And I'll tell you, hopefully I won't get in trouble for saying this, bro, but me and my sister both at age 6 and 7 were raped by the same dude. And you spend time upset and angry at the world, but it doesn't change anything. Being angry doesn't change anything. Even belief in God doesn't really change the fact that it happened. But if he is real and death is the end of this life, and that we wake up to true life and real life, and we face him, that's the real life, where those things don't happen. So, if you're upset at God for bad things happening on this world on my behalf, or people like me, you can let that go. Let that go, buddy, because the world's a messed up place, and real life begins when we're with him.
Yeah, I'll go back to what I said before. I never really said that God was mean or that he was I never said that. I just said he wasn't worthy of worship, in my opinion. That's not me.
That's what that.
making any
Okay,
assertions
so
about his-
why is he not worthy of worship?
Well, what has he done to earn my worship? It's not like it's like a respect thing. Respect is not given. I don't
He
respect
sent
him.
his son to unalive to pay for all your sins. So if you're stuck in a dichotomy to where automatically there is a deity, because now for us to have this conversation, you would have to concede hypothetically that there's a deity. So because you're under this hypothetical situation to where you believe that a deity exists, the rules are this. The rules of this deity says that if you sin, you go to hell. End of story. There's only heaven and hell. That's the dichotomy. And because you've conceded to the fact that this deity is real, you have to accept those two things. Heaven and hell, that's your only two choices. And you're saying I wouldn't go to heaven when all I have to do is literally just believe and accept his gift of salvation. On the other hand, you're saying he didn't do anything to earn it when he literally sent himself, right, to unalive for your sins as a man. He paid the price. So how do you get that in this dichotomy and in this hypothetical that you're now agreeing to, how do you get that he did not do enough to earn your worship? Where are you getting that from?
Because God did not need to send down a physical embodiment of himself to suffer.
See, now you're going now you're going outside of the hypothetical that you already agreed to. This is it's nonsensical. You can't say that the God of the Bible, you can say you don't believe it, that's fine. But the moment that you start bringing these emotional arguments, you have to concede that he's real. Once you're conceding that he's real, now you have to work within that frame. Now you're going outside of the frame and saying he doesn't need to do something. Now you're pretending that you know better than the deity in the very scenario that you put yourself in, brother. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, of course,
I think this is a little bit bigger than a debate or, trying to help him understand how.
Well, hold on, guys. Hold on. Like I said, I got a lot of Christians up here, and I don't mind it because it's getting towards the end. But I'm trying to walk him through this. This is why when I said I don't do the emotional arguments, because the moment that I walked you into this, the moment I did it, I said, okay, why is God not worthy of worship? Okay, you're now conceding and saying that he's not worthy of worship because A, B, C, and D. So you're going through the hypothetical. You literally placed yourself in the hypothetical, and the moment you don't want to concede to it, you go outside of the hypothetical and say that it wouldn't do that. It's not logical. It doesn't make any sense. That's why I try to stay away from the emotional arguments of what you just did.
But do you understand, in order for me to have a logical conversation with a theological person, I have to meet you halfway and accept some theological hypotheticals in order to even have the conversation in the first place. So me acknowledging that those things are possible,
guys,
it's not me
Christians, please.
me stepping into that box. That is me acknowledging that that box could exist, but I don't stand in that box. If that makes sense.
Right, I do. So what moral hierarchy are you using in an effort to say that he's not worthy of worship? Where are you getting this moral compass from?
The moral compass that I have built through 19 years of growing up, looking at my surroundings, going through life saying, oh my God, that man hit that man, and that made everybody quite upset. Oh, well, that must be bad.
Right. Are your morals subjective or objective?
Well, the definitely. You ask good questions, motherfucker.
Come on, brother. Come on. You can do it. You can do it, brother.
Buddy. You got this.
The thing is, the whole conversation in the first place is literally subjective to one species, and that is us. So it's not like we have like a more intelligent brethren that we can go and ask.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question. Is your moral hierarchy, is it subjective or objective? If it's subjective, then no disrespect, but who cares?
Obviously, it's subjective to my worldly understanding. I'm sorry, I've completely overcomplicated that question. Of course, it's subjective.
I gotcha.
It's subjective.
Okay, so if it's subjective, I'll be honest with you. I think that that's evil, because once you say that morals are subjective, now you're saying things like
well, my brother mentioned earlier, the grape of little children is subjectively evil. It's subjective. So what Jeffrey Epstein did was not truly bad because it was only subjectively bad, meaning that you think it's bad, but he didn't. And because he didn't think it was bad, his subjective moral standards are subjective, and they say it's not bad. What I did to those little children in Jeffrey Epstein's mindset, he's saying what I did to those little children is not technically bad because morals are just subjective. Now, if you're going to say that no, what he did is objectively wrong, meaning that it's wrong no matter what in every scenario possibly conceived by anything, this what he did was objectively wrong, then you have to have an objective standard giver. That's God.
A moral lawgiver.
So objective means that it's going to be wrong no matter what in every single scenario. And then you have to have God to give. It's one of the greatest arguments for God ever, right? And you're saying that your morals are subjective. And I think I'm not slinging rocks at you, so be man enough to hear this and not take an insult to it. I think that's evil. Because if it's subjective, then you start to get off into the things that are done to little children, and you say, well, the individual, why should we jail that individual? It's not objectively wrong, it's subjectively wrong. And clearly, he didn't think it was wrong in his opinion. So if he didn't think he was wrong, why should we, who gives us the authority to come in and say, hey man, what you did was wrong, now you're going to jail for it for the rest of your life? Why? Who are we to say that what he did was wrong? All morals are subjective.
Yes, but that's what I mean. I conceded that our morals are subjective to our worldly understanding, but our morals are not subjective in what you kind of described there was a person-to-person subjectivity, which is not what I was kind of conceding to. Objective morality is an encompassable real thing, but at the end of the day, our morality is only subjective to the current understanding we have now. So in 50 years, our moral understanding may have changed because in its form it is subjective, but there is some absolute within what I would believe is the perfect human moral system, which I don't believe Go on.
Because we're on this same scenario right here. If there was if everybody on the planet, with the exception of you, if everybody on the planet said, yeah, you know what he did to those children now is fine, and we're going to legalize it forever. Does that still mean does that make it right, or is it still technically wrong?
Well, it's still technically wrong, but at the end of the day, the laws of the state of which you live in should not determine. At the end of the day, my country outlaws the use of.
Okay, so it's not a majority view. So if everybody thinks that it's wrong, if everybody thinks that it's right, and you're still saying that it is objectively wrong, that means that the moral system that you're getting from does not come from a majority viewpoint. So where are you getting those morals from? It's not from the betterment of society, because in our make-believe world, everybody thinks it's okay. So you're not getting it from society. You're not getting it from your surroundings. You're getting it from the objective standard giver, and that has to be God.
Well, I mean, does the God of your Bible even outright outlaw slavery? I don't think he does.
That's my point. That's my point right there.
It's going to another topic. There it is.
So that's my point. That's
of morality that is on topic.
No, I got you. So that's my point, though, right? It's an emotional argument. If my God in the Bible, which I can try to explain it the best way that I can, but let's just, for the sake of argument, if my God in the Bible absolutely condoned it 100%, does that make him not God anymore?
What? So if God condones slavery, would that make him not God?
He's still God, right? He's just a mean God that condones slavery.
Well,
this is why I don't do the emotional arguments, because no disrespect, you don't have a ground to stand on. First of all, this is why I'm showing you. This is why I walked you through this, because this is why it's an appeal to an emotion, because it's not logically thought out. right? Because if it's logically thought out, then this is why it's literally a fallacy. This is why it's a fallacy. It's called an appeal to an emotion. Because the reason why is because it wouldn't change the circumstances of God being real or not. If you concede that God is real, then the morals is objective. And if they're objective by the deity, then regardless if the deity was a really, really bad person, right, a really, really bad deity, he can't be quote unquote bad because he is the standard giver. So by definition, if he's the standard giver, this is why I walked you through morals being good or bad, right? The objective or subjective. If they're objective, that means the deity gave them. If the deity gave them out, then by definition, it's not bad. He can't be bad. He's the moral standard. How are you saying that the moral standard is different if he's the deity? If morals are objective, he can't be wrong. This is why it doesn't make any sense. So, by your standard, if God still allowed slavery, would he be God? And the answer is clearly yes. Right? So that's why I walked your whole, I hope you was able to follow that. I don't want to sound disrespectful or anything. But that's why the moral arguments never work out, because they always end up back to this place. If God is real, then morals are objective. And he cannot be bad by the objection because he's the standard giver, right? If he's the standard, it can't be bad, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I could set a standard for you right now, but in 2,000 years, if somebody comes along and says, the standard,
is that an objection?
That wasn't really a good standard.
If you set the standard, I'm not trying to interrupt, John. I want to do it one at a time. If you set the standard, am I saying that that's an objective standard or a subjective standard? If I see you as the objective standard, then whatever standard you set cannot be bad because it is the standard we use. If you set the standard that says stealing apples is 100% okay, you're the standard. If you say that stealing apples is okay, then it's objective, then me stealing apples is not bad because you're the standard. Do you understand?
Yeah, I mean, it's not hard to understand.
It's a little bit, I usually don't do the theological stuff because this starts to get off into a lot of theological stuff, and I'm not really a phil bro, the philosophical stuff too. It's hard for people to kind of grasp this. That's why I'm trying to walk you through it slow. If you're the objection standard giver and you say that it's okay to steal apples, then by default, if I steal an apple, it's not bad because you're the objection. You're the objective standard giver, right? So it can't be bad. Now, if I say that it's not objective, but it's subjective, then anybody can say anything is anything, and I'm saying that's my argument for saying God doesn't exist. People that say God doesn't exist have to state that these things are subjective. That's why you see a lot of TikTok saying that morality is subjective, because the moment you admit that it's objective, who's the one that's given the objective standard? Okay? That has to be God, right? That has to be a deity. So if your standard is subjective, then you're arguing that God doesn't exist. So it wouldn't matter because everybody is subject to their own moral compass. There is no true standard, and everybody could just do whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've hit a bit of a brick wall. I think we're both kind of going around in circles. I think it'd be nice for me to mute my mic for a little bit and give somebody else a chance to talk before you have to go off, because I know you have to go off soon. But like I say, I really, really hope I haven't offended anybody or shown any disrespect. If I have, like I say, sometimes these topics can get fiery, but I think that's our best quality as humans, is that
Thank you, man.
we don't allow it to keep firing. I think that's the one quality of Christians that I will always admire, and it's the main reason why I still to this day.
Yeah, I appreciate that, brother. Appreciate that. Yeah, and you're not gonna offend me, man. If you did, I would have already done knocked you off of here. And even then, most of the time, I'm not offended. It's just because you broke a rule or something. But yeah, and I appreciate the conversation, man. Give me a follow, and if you have any questions, like I said, I'd love to be the one to help lead you back to Christ, man. So
yeah, I mean, honestly,
I appreciate it.
I wanted to come on here mainly because a lot of I want to come on here mainly because if a lot of atheists just see that picture in the background with the dinosaurs and the ark, and they immediately assume because of your belief in a young age Earth, you're not worth talking to, and that is a toxic part of my like I say, I'm not an atheist, but I do have many atheistic beliefs, so I feel like I'm somewhat part of that culture. So that's part of the reason why I come here, because at the end of the day, all of our beliefs are valid,
so
and we're all here to speak.
let me answer your question outright directly, because like I said, when people ask in good faith, I don't mind asking. The Bible gives laws that the Jews had to comply with slavery. Now, what do we mean when we say slavery in the Bible? We have to look at the context of the slavery, and we have to look at what it means. You can't, when people say slavery, they automatically think of like how the American slavery, right? That they went to this continent, they stole African people that was against their will, that had no beef with us. We took them back to America and forced them into labor. That's clearly bad and wrong, right? And it should be noted that it was Christians as the one that stood up against that and got that taken care of, right? It was why the Western nations were Christians. When they turned Christian, these Western nations got rid of slavery because of the moral standard. Now, when the book of Deuteronomy and stuff talks about slavery, it's not the same kind of slavery that you see in the Bible, right? These were sometimes, there's different types. One of them is indentured servitude, right? You could literally put yourself into slavery. You could go to someone that had more means than you if you were a poor person. We see this with, not Jacob, or not Joseph, but Jacob, when he wanted to marry Sarah, right? He goes and he makes a deal with the guy that had the daughter and all the land. And he said, I will work for you for 7 years in an effort for me to marry your daughter, right? Long story short, he married the wrong daughter because they got him drunk, and he had to work for the man another 7 years, right? They didn't pay people like they do now with cash and stuff like this. They did have transactions. I'm not saying that. You had cattle and stuff like that. But one of the ways you could do it was indentured servitude. You could go to that individual and say, hey, I am submitting myself to be your quote-unquote slave. Now, God puts forth laws that you have to comply with in an effort to do this. You couldn't run around and beat your slave. Do you know that in the Bible, this is in the Bible, if your quote-unquote slave escaped, that's it. They're free. You can't go back and get them. If you owned a slave and I owned a slave and they escaped me and they went to you, you are in no position to give that slave back to me. That's in the Bible. I can take you straight to the verse, right? Is that the kind of slavery that people think about when it's in the Bible? If you're a slave, what happened in the United States is it's really a tragic event. It was actually a black slave owner that actually got this into the Supreme Court. So in the United States, there was a black individual that come here. He was a free man, and he bought some slaves. And before I wish I could tell you his name. I can look it up if you'd like the reference. But one of his slaves, he was talking to a white man, right? And the white man said, how long are you a slave for? And he said, I'm a slave for life. What are you talking about? The white man said, no, you're not a slave for life, dude. You don't have to be a slave for life. Well, that slave run off. So the black slave owner sued the white man and said that he told my slave he wasn't a slave for life, and yes, he is a slave for life. So this went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court sided with the black slave owner and said yes, once it's their property, and because he bought him, that means he's property and he's property for life. So that was a very bad decision by the Supreme Court, obviously. It's a very nasty part of American history. But before that, the slave, you couldn't own somebody for life, right? That's not what happened in the Bible. It's not the same slavery. If your slave escaped in the Bible, that was it. End of story. There was under no obligation to return you the slave. And in fact, it says, hold on, I'll go to the verse. Let me read you the verse. Sorry, I got to pull it up.
I got it right here. It's Deuteronomy 23:15-16. This is the King James. It's what I read. It said, "Thou shalt not deliver unto his master the servant which is escaped from his master unto thee. He shall dwell with thee, even among you, in a place which he shall choose, in thy gates." So you see right here, the slave gets to choose where he stays. Now, is that the kind of slavery that we see here in the United States? No, slaves don't get to choose where they stay. And if they escaped in the United States, then by law you were obligated to return them after that Supreme Court case. Here in the Bible, it doesn't say that. Now, it was also, there's different types of slavery. You could begin, these were warring tribes at the time. They didn't have city walls and stuff like we think of today, or different nation states like we think of today. A lot of the times, the Bible, you know how many times the Jews had to fight the same individuals in the Bible constantly? The reason why is because these individuals lived around each other. They would war with each other constantly. So if you went and unalived all of their men, in their army, then those women and children in that separate nation would starve to death. They didn't have anybody to take care of it. I know people might think that's a sexist thing to say, but that's just the rules of the land. That's just the way it is, right? An entire group of women and children are not going to be able to make it on their own, right? So they would come into the Jews, and the Jews would place them into quote unquote slavery. And it's not the same kind of slavery that we see today where they would work for them. And we know that this is clearly the case because the people groups survived and the Jews had to fight them again later. So anyway, it's a long topic, but there you go, brother. That's me trying to answer your question very directly. So does the Bible condone slavery? In the strict sense of the way that we're saying, yes, it does, but you have to look at the context. It's not the same kind of slavery that we see today, or that we see in China today, and that we saw in the Americas in the 1600s, right?
May I add something onto this? But on the other hand, it's also permissible by the Exodus chapter that you can also beat your slave to death as long as he doesn't die the day you beat him. If he dies a day or two after you beat him, it's no punishment. But if he dies,
that's not what that's saying, brother. You're misinterpreting that, and I hope you're not doing that on purpose in an effort to try to get a gotcha. That's not what that says. It's literally saying the otherwise, that you cannot.
Your understanding of the verse.
It's saying that you cannot beat them to death, brother. That's what it's saying. You cannot, and again, when we, it's just like spanking your child. That's not, did people get, there was no place where you put these people in jail, right? There was punishments, right? So could you whip somebody or something back then if they done wrong? Could you beat them if you will? Yeah, just no different like spanking your child when they do wrong. Yes, you cannot abuse them. There's a difference between a punishment, like a corporal punishment that's set down, or a difference between abusing somebody. And the Bible in this context is clearly saying that you can't abuse them. It's not saying that you can't punish somebody for doing something wrong. It's saying that you can't abuse them. That's what the context of that verse is saying.
But at the end of the day, striking somebody with a rod is abuse. That is not discipline. That is abuse.
No, that's your standard now that you're using, when we already walked through the whole standard of objection and subjection. So let me ask you, which is more abuse? Like, so the Bible sets out laws and things like this, right? So for example, if you stole something from somebody, you were forced to pay that person back 7 times. So if I stole a cow from you, I had to repay you with 7 cows, right? Or the monetary value of those 7 cows. If somebody steals something today, we put them in jail, and then our tax dollars goes to repay them, right? We have to feed them in the jail, right? So our tax dollars go to support them. The person who they stole from, did they get any recompense from that? No, they didn't get any recompense from that. So you're using a moral system that we have now that is flawed, that if somebody steals something, according to the Bible, they have to pay it back. And there is punishments about, I would much rather get hit. If I'd done something wrong that I wasn't supposed to do, I would much rather, and I'm not talking about the big stuff like schmurder or anything like that. If I did something to somebody that I wasn't supposed to do, and let's say that, I'm not saved and I stole from somebody or something, I would much rather get slapped with a stick because of my punishment. That's not going to kill me. They're not talking about crippling people or but get smacked with a stick because you did something wrong, then spend 20 years in prison that I could never get back.
But you're saying it's just a tiny whip, but the actual verse quite literally says, if they die in a day or two, there is no punishment. So what are you saying? We're not just talking about a little slap. We're talking
what verse are you looking at?
We're talking about...
What verse are you looking at?
We're talking about Exodus 21 and 21, 20... Exodus 21, I believe. Exodus 21, I do believe. But I do believe the exact context of the verse that is that if the slave dies 1 or 2 days after the beating occurs or the punishment occurs, then there is no punishment on the slave owner. And I'm standing by that. Like I say, I have not got the memory.
And he die under his hand, he shall surely be punished. If he continues a day or so and is not punished for his money. This is one of the most... Let's see here. Let's get the pay to the saying. Text of the book in Genesis context. So it flows. Give it in Israel as recorded.
There's also passages in Leviticus as well, I guess, that people are talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah, I'm just reading up here.
But this is the question that he brought up. Obviously, I do understand the moral argument that he brings up, and it is a very valid argument that morals are so, well, you can't call them subjective or objective. I think it completely depends on your worldview. But
my pastor actually answered that question for me as well, and he was saying that the word slave also was for a somebody who was a pupil, a student, an understudy.
Yeah, so we can look. You got to look at the whole context of this thing, and this is talking about like an investigation. So if the slave dies later, then it wasn't determined that he was beat by him. Then there's no quote unquote schmurder there. We can also see in the exact same book. This was Exodus 21 verse 20. If you go to Exodus 21 verse 26 through 27, this is in the same context. It literally states, and if a man smite the eye of his servant and destroy it, meaning that if you punch the servant in the eye and it ends up causing the servant to go blind, you shall let him go free for his eye's sake.
Well, for the sake of his other eye, or for the sake of the eye that he lost.
That's right. That's my no. You got to let him go free because the punishment was too severe. Right? Let's say you're the individual that's working for you, or even if you want to call it a slave in the context, if he does something bad and it deserves your quote unquote punishment and you smite him in the face and it causes him to lose his eye, then you have to let that individual go because your punishment was too great. You overdid it, for lack of a better term, right? Now look,
that verse.
This is I don't do the emotional argument stuff because it sounds like I'm up here supporting all of these, that we would consider to be bad now, but based off of our moral system.
To some extent supporting slavery. I don't think.
No, you're not. No, because you're not. This is my point. You pretend like you can take the moral high ground because you're sitting in a chair in 2026, pretending like these things don't apply us now to then. These were tent-dwelling people who didn't have that, could not afford that ability to have our moral system that we have today. And if they did, a lot more people would unalive, and your people group would unalive because you're entirely too soft, for lack of a better term. But again, you got to look at it in the context of this individual. If you think the world, this is what I talk to when I've been overseas, right? I've been in the military. I've been overseas, and most Western nations now have this concept that the world thinks like Americans. And I can usually tell when I'm talking to a Western individual, not just necessarily America, but a Western individual who believes that the world thinks like they do. Do you know that if you go to Arabia and you steal something, back, not so much now, but when you did back then, they cut your arms off, right? Do you know how many people stole because of that?
And that verse with the slave is relieving liability. If he were to die 2 or 3 days later, there had to be a rule saying you can beat him and you couldn't beat him to death. Well, sadly, if you gave him a brain aneurysm and you didn't know it, you did it by mistake, he died 3 days later, they're going to point at the law and say you can't beat him to death. When he was in the law, when he beat him, he gave him a just reward, and then 3 days later, a mistake happened. They couldn't hold him liable. That verse is relieving the person who issued the punishment. It relieves them of liability for mistakes.
Yeah. But anyway, if you yeah, exactly. But if you keep looking down at the very next couple of verses, it literally tells you that if you overdo it, that you got to let them go free. So again, I think we're sitting in our moral high ground in 2026, saying that we're judging these people by our people today. And again, in the context of these verses, it's not the same kind of slavery that we've seen in the Americas, and I think that's what a lot of people are trying to judge it to. But anyway, brother, I didn't mind trying to answer your question because I did think you were coming from a place of sincerity instead of trying to use it as a quote unquote moral argument. So there, I've tried to answer your question best I could.
Yeah, honestly, I think honestly, I'll be honest, you have given more sufficient answers to any questions I have ever asked any theist in my entire life. So if that's a good compliment, I don't know if it is, but
I'll take it as one. Thank you, man.
I'm not even 20 years of age, so I've got a lot more years of speaking about the big questions. You know what I mean? I think that I honestly, no offense to anybody who doesn't think about these things, but I think people who don't get together at least once in their life and talk about the big questions and talk about this stuff, I think it's a little bit of a sign of a lower intelligence. And I think it's good to question things and to have conversations about this stuff, in my opinion.
I mean, I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll take that as a compliment.
Dogma is the biggest plague on the world, in my opinion. Like the concept of something being unquestionable is just the concept of dogma to me is just crazy. And obviously, England is still quite a Catholic country. Obviously, I grew up in a Catholic school where I was forced to sit down on the floor and sing, "He's got the whole world in his hands." And like there was a certain point where I think I believed and I did enjoy it, but it was as soon as I started to question, I was grabbed by the hand and I was led out and I was explained that, while people are talking and while we're singing, we don't ask questions. We just kind of respect the people that are singing and talking, and we just listen. And after that, I just didn't feel like, I don't know. After that, I think that was one of the defining moments that have definitely led me to have a more atheistic point of view. Like I said, I'm not an atheist. I'm definitely more of an agnostic than an atheist. But as you know, an agnostic can definitely have more atheistic views than an agnostic views and still be an agnostic. It's not a kind of exclusive thing, if that makes sense.
I gotcha.
Yeah, just understand that those are the actions of people. Don't blame God for what people did. We always, I just hear in so many lives where we talk about how this happened, that happened, and the whole time I don't hear God one time. I just hear what some man did, some woman did, some person who claimed to be a Christian did. Not all people who claim to be Christian are actually Christian. But I will say this one thing, and then I'm gonna let him get back to it. I noticed that when you eat bacon and don't follow the Quran, no one calls you a Muslim. But when you don't follow the religious doctrine in the Bible, you don't follow the Ten Commandments, you don't follow God, people will still let you call yourself a Christian, even though you're not doing anything Christian. I land.
Amen.
Pretty good point. Honestly, I do believe that the word Christian has been like, I was speaking to a Methodist earlier today who did not believe anything of the creation and stuff in the Bible was actually literal. He thought every single bit was figurative, and I was like, but how? How can you rationalize evolution, pre-hominid species, dinosaurs being millions of years old, the Earth being with the Bible? It's impossible. You might think that you have rationalized that, and you can be a Christian and a believer in old Earth theory, but no offense, I'm here to break.
Okay,
And I think
let's watch
that
our
is some-
language. I might have some kids listening to me.
I do apologize, but I just kind of got excited because I think that is something that me and you could agree on wholeheartedly for once in this entire conversation.
Now, I was going to say that I absolutely agree with you. But like I
Yeah,
said, man, I did take it as a compliment. I appreciate it. If it is starting to get, I'm starting to run towards the end of it. So if anybody else wants to come up and compliment me really quickly, I'll accept that and then I'll move on.
Yeah, it's 1 a.m. out in the UK right now, so I am actually gonna head to sleep. But it's been a lovely chat with all you guys, and I hope you all safe in America. And I hope, no offense, I hope Trump does. I hope
There you go
everything
again.
comes good.
All right, man. I appreciate you coming. Thank you, man. Thank you, sir.
Come back and listen
All right.
more, bro.
Yeah, I had to remove him right there at the very end when he's saying bye because he broke my rules and kept cussing. Good Lord, it takes me time to edit this stuff out, guys. That's why I don't like people cussing because when I
He wanted to get
post
into
a
Orange
live, I
Man
try to
Bad
edit it.
debate.
Yeah, he don't have to like Trump. I don't care about that. But I mean, it just literally, I have to download the video and then I got to mark the time over here. And then I don't have to, but I prefer, when I'm spreading the word of God that people don't have to listen to a bunch of MF stuff. So that's why I prefer, I'm a big boy. I can hear words, but it just causes me extra work. So that's why it's one of my rules. So, guys, I appreciate it. If anybody has any last minute questions or anything that they want to add to it, now's the time. All right, like I said, at the end of these lives, I never ask for money. I'm not asking for money, but I do want to make it a point at the end of the lives to thank everybody that gave. Sometimes I'm in the middle of a conversation with somebody or a debate, and somebody puts a sticker in or something like that I can't literally thank the person while I'm doing it because I'm live. So I don't have the opportunity to thank them, so I do it now. Thank you guys for the support. I do have a PayPal because people just want to give to the ministry on my page, so I do appreciate it. It goes back into the ministry. By no means do I make a lot of money off of this, but everything that I do make, I do put back into the ministry, buying lights and mics and things of this nature. And I got plans for the future. I want to have a room ready and have a dinosaur head kind of like behind me so that I can engage with people a little bit more. Once I get a little bit bigger, I'm going to go live on more platforms and things like this. And it all comes from the support of you guys. So I'm not asking for it, but I just say that I do appreciate it and it doesn't go unnoticed. For everyone that does it, thank you. Chris, you just come in. You got anything?
Hey, man. Yeah, honestly, I just want to thank you for your answers. I mean, there are seasons when I doubt, but when I come back to, these truths, it's just great to hear them again. So I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, man. That gets me emotional. Appreciate it. Thank you for that compliment.
Yeah,
It means a lot.
Yeah, not to drag it or get too emotional, but I recently lost my mom. And so it's like I've been a believer pretty much all my life, and so I'm trying to search for the answers. And so when science tells me the complete opposite of what we believe, it to me, like just what I heard, it just contradicts what science is teaching. And so I appreciate all the, the solid answers and, just everything, you've been saying, is from the heart and it's from the truth. And that's all we can do, so I appreciate it.
Hey, man, thank you. Thank you for that encouragement. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, William, you take care, man. Have a good one.
All right, brother. Do the same. Do the same, man. God bless.
You too.
All right. What a great compliment. What a great compliment. All right. Guys, I appreciate it. God bless. And Mr. Allen, as always, you get the last word.
Well, God bless you, brother, and everyone else that's still here on the panel. Astra, number one. William, when I have my surgery, you can let everybody know, that what's going on. I'll let you know for sure. So good evening, everybody, and God bless you.
God bless. I will be going live Monday, but I will state that I have to get off a little bit earlier Monday. I'll have to get with my man LT. If you guys have watched my live anytime, you know that I also usually do the pre-tribulation stuff. Shout out to Jason for making the background for me today. He did this for me. The LT is going to do a debate on Monday about the pre-tribulation rapture where it's not biblical. And he's debating a pre-trib guy. So if you like the conversation like I do as far as pre-tribulation versus mid-trib, post-trib, all these different things. If you like those type of conversations, then I would encourage you guys after my Monday live to go over there and check that out. But as it sits right now, that debate is still ongoing. It's got postponed a couple times, but it's set up for Monday. And so come Monday, I will let you guys know more about it.